The Arcane Research Society returns to bring esoteric scholarship and practice in 2026 with 2 major events held in Austin, Texas. Register for an annual membership and attend online or in person all of our annual events, including June 13th, our spring workshop, and November 6th through 8th, EnochiaCon, our full esotericism conference. The ARS Spring Workshop features 3 workshops led by Jason Louv, Craig Williams, and Frater RC. Spend a whole day in downtown Austin, Texas, enjoying these hands-on deep dives with experts in their fields. Register today for all live events included with ARS annual membership, Spring Workshop, and EnochiaCon, which features too many amazing presenters to name. Sign up today at arcaneresearchsociety.com. Late in November 1891, in one of a cluster of small buildings known as Tavies Inn, south of Holborn Circus, London, a remarkable wooden structure was being painted. 7-sided and 8 feet tall, it had a coffin in the center, and above that a movable altar. The painters, a tall, athletic man named Samuel Little McGregor Mathers, and a young woman, Moina Mathers, had been working for weeks on perfecting the grids of 40 magical symbols that adorned each side. As the gas lamps were lit in the streets below and the distant rumbling of carriages on the busy London thoroughfare reached them through the open window, the couple murmured instructions to each other. Moina was an artist, having trained at the Slade School of Art from the age of 15, and had become invaluable to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. As an in-house artist and designer, she played a vital role in carrying out her husband's design. For the past decade, meanwhile, Mathers had studied the occult symbolism of alchemy, astrology, tarot, and the paths of the mystical Kabbalah, and fashioned a system of correspondences that brought them all together. Even the color scheme of the painted form was constructed according to the planets and the zodiac. Once the 7 walls were complete, the magicians turned their attention to the coffin at the vault's center. And thus begins the introduction of this exciting new book by Dr. Felix John Taylor from Thames and Hudson. I think this might be the first mass-produced coffee table Golden Dawn book ever made. Correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me what you think, but I don't think there's a lot of them. Yeah. Well, so we're going to look through this as it finally arrived yesterday, coming out in Canada a couple months after everywhere else. Good to see everyone here in the chat. Let's put you up on screen and make you big and proud and loud. Regular. Hey, Occultology, Jorge, Jacobus, good to see everybody. The usual suspects. Let's have some fun. So this, I think if you notice the title of my YouTube live stream, I won't leave you hanging. I'll answer the question it raises right away. The only thing wrong with this book is that it's not longer. It was advertised as the first narrative full history of the Golden Dawn, but it's less than 200 pages and starts off with Yeats and then goes into Crowley. Well, here, let me tell you the exact titles. I'm very looking forward to actually reading through all of this. I'll probably have to put it off till later the spring or summer to actually read the whole thing cover to cover. But maybe not. Maybe I just have other things on the list. I got to finish Melissa Seam's book first and talk to her, and then the list is long. And it's what I do in my fun free time, of course, if that still is such a thing. Chapter 1, Metaphors for Poetry, W.B. Yeats. Chapter 2, A Gift Given to the Wise, Florence Farr. Chapter 3, The Twilight Star, A.E. Waite and Arthur Machen. Chapter 4, Babe of the Abyss, Aleister Crowley. 5, The Spell of Sound, W.B. Yeats again, Florence Farr and Pamela Coleman Smith. And 6, Metaphysical Thrillers, Charles Williams and Dion Fortune. No mention of any of the founders of the Golden Dawn. And I think what this is as the reviews say on the back, Ronald Hutton says this is a lucid study of the relationship between the modern ceremonial magic of the Golden Dawn tradition and the literary arts, showing the manner in which the former stimulated and transmuted into the latter. This is not a perspective that has been fully developed before, and interesting primary documents are utilized in pursuit of it. So that's fun, and there is a lot of great full color plates throughout the book. So that's really exciting, and I can show those to you. But yeah, really great stuff here. Now, and as a mass-produced mainstream book for the Golden Dawn, I think a great way to get dispel the satanic panic and get a better understanding of this out into the world is by showing how groups like this contributed to cultural value, literary artifacts, and mainly the lives of the people involved, like Yeats, Florence Farr, Fiona Shaw. Well, no, Arthur Machen. Sorry, I said Fiona Shaw. That's the pseudonym of Charles Williams. Oh, no, Charles Williams was A.E., but I might be getting things confused. Yeah. Anyway, he divides up the grades well. At first glance, it looks like it's rather astutely done, which makes sense for someone with a PhD. I really hope to talk to the author and once I have a better sense of the book, because it looks like they got quite granular in a sense. It's not a general overall narrative history at all. It's a granular study of very specific ways in which the Golden Dawn influenced the people and influenced the culture. So what's the significance of a group like the Golden Dawn in the broader culture? And this book shows you. So that is very, very good. Very, very excellent. Like exciting, even, you could say. So at first I was like, how can you advertise a book as a complete history, more or less, of something, and then it be less than 200 pages and not have any of the main people's names in the chapter headings? Well, that's how it's the advertising is just slightly off, but that's okay. It gets people to click or buy, and then they find out whether they really like it. And that's sort of the world we live in these days. Does seem to have a heavy focus on Aleister Crowley. That's always that's the go-to, but depends what maybe what he's gonna finally say is how overrated Crowley is in the history of the Golden Dawn. He came in at the very end, and how much did he really do? I think it's hard to say how much he did. We can talk about that. We'll check out some of what the author himself says on a podcast. So we'll look at some of that, and hopefully that'll encourage you to go listen to the entire podcast on hermetics. Let's see if there's another cool. Yeah, here's some broadsheets. They indeed do. Yeah, some pages from Yeats's notebooks. Yeah, that's very interesting. So, yeah, I look forward to getting over to Ireland, hopefully, maybe this year, but probably next year. And when I'm already in Europe, and see finally the Yeats exhibit, which wasn't there in the 5 years I had a residence in Ireland. Yeah, it's got the naked Crowley pictures doing yoga, of course, in his Masonic apron. So always a treat. He's like, well, I can't show my genitalia, so we'll just put the Masonic apron over top. What? That sounds perfectly natural. And you can't study cultural impact of the Golden Dawn without studying Crowley pretty heavily. I mean, that's beautiful, isn't it? Look at that. That's Pamela Coleman Smith, Pixie Smith, creator of the Yeats Tarot with Waite. I call it the Yeats Tarot because it was his idea. So Felix John Taylor is a librarian at the Queen's College, Oxford. He completed his PhD at St. Hugh's College, Oxford, on Welsh mythology and folklore in the 20th century literature. And while he oversaw a reading group devoted to the occult in literature. He has previously held positions at the Bodleian Modern Languages and Arts and Archaeological Libraries, and currently writes for the Literary Review. Very cool. Other titles of interest. He wrote a book called Celtic Magick, which clearly I'm going to have to read. A Practitioner's Guide. Oh, maybe I have that. Is that the new one that came out that I... Yeah, I think that's the new one that I got, and I've checked out already. That's interesting. Prolific guy. He's a young guy too. Let's dive into a bit about him, right? Let's see what he has to say for himself. Then we can jump back to the book. And if you have super chats, questions, I'll interrupt and address what you have to say, or you can just chitter away in the chat, and I'll get to I'll do a review after an hour or so.
So, Felix John Taylor, thanks very much for joining me on HERMETIC's podcast. We are going to be discussing your very recently published book, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Magic Arts and the Occult Revival, which is published by Thames and Hudson. And I will say, for those that are watching, I'm gonna take this. This is a beautiful hardback edition. So if you're watching, a lovely red hardback, but also some plates, not something you see too much these days, but full color gloss plates.
Yeah, so richly illustrated
with over 60 illustrations.
Yeah, and so it is. I noticed in the States it's only $30 right now. So I have a link in the description. It's affiliate link, gets me like 50 cents. If you use my link, check it out. It is beautifully done. Yeah, I know what you're saying, holding it, through the Crowley bits, but like, I mean, it depends how much you've read Crowley. Crowley can be very enjoyable to read, and again, I'm allowed to have multiple feelings about Crowley at the same time. But yeah, let's see right off. What's he say about Crowley at the start of The Babe of the Abyss? Because the Babe of the Abyss thing is probably one of the most damaging ideas that Crowley created and then got read backwards into the Golden Dawn. What's that called when you read something backwards into a thing? There's a word for that. You get a prize if you know the word. It's a gorgeous day here in Vancouver, BC. I'm going to go for a long walk after this. $36 hardcover. Yeah, it's a great deal. Babe of the Abyss, Chapter 4. I, Padurabo, as the temporary envoy plenipotentiary of Deo Duce Comite Faro, that's Mather's motto, and thus the third from the secret chiefs of the Order of the Rose of Ruby and Cross of Gold, do deliberately invoke all laws, all powers divine, demanding that I, even I, be chosen to do such a work as he has done at all costs to myself. At least he was humble. The entry in Aleister Crowley's diary for 12th April 1900 conveys the sacrificial mentality he assumed as he crossed the English Channel as Mather's representative. He was 24. Only 2 years earlier, he had been at Trinity College, Cambridge. Yeah, keep that in mind. People often, when they read about Yeats's, Crowley's rivalry with Yeats, it was more like a one-way street. Like, imagine your famous, successful 35-year-old, author, poet, celebrated nationally with many books, and then some 24-year-old comes along and starts, joins your group. You let him into your group, and he starts telling everyone you're trash. Yeah, so Crowley was technically sort of a millionaire at that time because of his inheritance, but like, that's not an evolved or mature person, and he certainly wasn't at that time. And he definitely evolved and matured a lot over his life, but yeah, when Crowley arrived in London, he first met with his accomplice, Elaine Simpson, and together they managed to break into the second order rooms at Blythe Road, called the Battle of Blythe Road, for those of you who don't know what this occurrence is. They changed the locks, and a childish Crowley, annoyed at having previously been denied entry into the second order, well, he was still denied entry, He wasn't given entry at this point either. Added his name to the official roll call. Yeah. So that's the basis on which people think he actually became admitted to the inner order, is him adding his own name to the official roll call. 2 days later, it was all over. Now, of course, there's debates about this. Crowley had yoked himself to Mathers because he had recognized the Imperator's extraordinary attainment in magic and ignored the ethical claims made against him. Ordinary morality is for only ordinary people. It's got endnotes. God damn it. What the fuck? Endnotes. So the stupidest thing you can put in a book. So stupid. Especially if it's like, if you just destroy the flow of reading. The authors often don't get a say, so I definitely don't blame the author on this one, But endnotes, man, like, yeah, we can't keep reading because we need to know what that note is. Otherwise, we don't know what the sentence means. For ordinary people, to ibid. Oh, it's an ibid. So we had to go all the way to the back of the book for an ibid. That's what I'm talking about. That is brain dead publishing. Quoted in Aleister Crowley, Confessions of Aleister Crowley. Yeah, so, like, you can either integrate that information into the writing. That's what we're taught in academia, or put it in a footnote. If you put key information in the back of a book, it makes it frustrating, shall we say. But anyway, I'm too excited for this book to let it rain on my parade. More importantly, he believed that Mathers possessed the only genuine link to the secret chiefs. If the GD had acted as a university for Yeats in the early 1890s, then for Crowley, the order was a gateway to higher powers. His initiation as a neophyte in 1898 was his first step on a path that would quickly transcend the order. For the time being, however, the Battle of Blythe Road had brought his formal association with the GD to an embarrassing and decisive end. Crowley was cast out at the same time that Mathers was deposed. Mathers was already deposed before this. This was just Crowley stirring up shit on Mathers' behalf because they had expelled Mathers because he had expelled Horniman for cutting off Mathers financially. And then there was a few other things going on, but that was the main story. So the authors simplified the history there for ease of understanding. And, but again, that could have been just sorted out in a little footnote there. Crowley's reputation preceded him, and he fostered it eagerly. Born Edward Alexander Crowley and known to his family as Alec. Oh, I didn't know that. He was called Alec, known as Alec. Huh. He eventually favored Aleister because of a theory that those whose names comprise a dactyl, one stressed syllable, then two unstressed, and a spondee, two stressed syllables, as in Jeremy Taylor, are most likely to become famous. Aleister so yeah, my name's got that. It was also the name of a poem by Shelley. Throughout his life, he would cultivate a list of other grandiose titles. The Beast, 666, Lord Boleskine, The Spirit of Solitude. I like that. I am, what, you're like, hey, how's it going? They're like, hey, what's your name? Spirit of Solitude. I'm going to try that. I'm going to try it next time I'm at the post office or something. Where were we? The Wanderer in the Waste, Perdurabo, and in 1923, The Wickedest Man in the World, courtesy of the newspaper John Bull. Reality provided a more nuanced picture when the novelist Anthony Powell, then an editorial assistant at the publisher Duckworth, lunched with Crowley sometime in the early 1930s. He half expected to be met by a thaumaturge in ritual dress. Powell was surprised to be greeted instead by a shabby figure whose Homburg hat disguised the unusual formation of his bald and shaven skull, and whose rasping near Cockney accent and music hall style of humor offset his reputation for wickedness. There was much that was absurd about him, Powell remembered. At the same time, it seems false to assert, as some did, that his absurdity transcended all sense of being sinister. If the word has any meaning, Crowley was sinister, intensely sinister, both in exterior and manner. So is that the same as creepy? Did he come off like a creep? What do you guys think? Do you think that if the word has any meaning, Crowley was sinister, intensely sinister, both in exterior and manner? So he's talking about how he actually behaved and what he was like. And sometimes you meet someone and they're acting all genial and friendly, but you can sense there's something different going on inside. Well, here Crowley acted the same way he seemed to be inside. So that's actually quite interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And okay. Yeah, let's see more. What do you guys think? Amazing Skull, yeah, by an Oxford academic. I mean, maybe. I mean, yeah, I'm a little worried about the scholarship in this book, honestly. Like right there was a fairly significant error, but not, one that an academic, I still want to talk to you, Felix, but like, I'm surprised you made that mistake there. I think that's because this isn't peer reviewed and being published for scholars. This is being published for the popular audience. So when a PhD publishes for a popular audience, they don't go through the same peer review process. There's not also the same burden of accuracy. So if you're a little fast and loose with, when Mather was deposed, who cares? But my concern is that this book might not have been written with any awareness of all the recent scholarship in the last 30 years. That's my fear, because we've done so much scholarship has been published, including by academics in doctoral dissertations and more, that, I'm worried that it's a missed opportunity to finally take that into account. So we just look in the back for Fuller. Okay, he's got John Gilbert, of course, quoted. He quotes John Gilbert, but does he have Fuller? If he doesn't have Fuller, then you're missing the most important history book academically written ever on the Golden Dawn. Yes, and it is missing that. It is missing the book Anglo-Catholic Clergy in the Golden Dawn. And that is the most important Golden Dawn history book and the most complete ever really written. And as an academic, he has easy access to it because it's a dissertation. You can just get it from the university library, or at least quote it, but it looks like it is not here at all. He does not quote Tony Fuller. He did not reference Tony Fuller's work, not here or in Light Extended, which is, I mean, it's shocking. It's shocking. Okay, but maybe he explains why.
Many of which are actually quite hard to find. I will like for those that are, into the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn or the figures that we're going to be talking about, I was surprised to see some of the paintings and things that had been put in there, and the pictures of Dion Fortune.
He thinks they're hard to find, but you just have to go on Facebook and go to a Golden Dawn group. They're all there. Not all of them, but yeah. I think people don't look for a lot of stuff because they just assume it wouldn't be being shared that openly. But we are sharing a lot of that stuff that openly because we want to go further and we want to understand the past. And the only way to do that is to share the past with each other and talk about it and then go farther from there. So we'll see. So yeah, don't Facebook. I mean, it is weird that the biggest place to do academic scholarship these days in a lot of ways is with other scholars on Facebook, whether they have PhDs or they're just independent, it doesn't matter. They're all there sharing with each other. And that's why I came back to Facebook after being off it for a long time. So
pretty much difficult to find for some reason. But this is a first full-length narrative history of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Previously done an episode on the Hermetic Order of
the first full-length narrative history. How? You got to stop saying that. That's it doesn't even quote the main history book. It doesn't even have it in its citations. Oh man, Felix, you're not going to talk to me after this, are you? I'm torn between. I'm really going to love this book. I know that. Because I love most of these books. It's really hard to, you'd have to do an intentional hatchet job, like Light Bearers of Darkness. That's the only Golden Dawn book I don't like, because the author wrote it to attack the Golden Dawn. So yeah, if you read Light Bearers of Darkness, that's a horrific book. Okay, but it's not a full-length narrative history at all. It's something completely different, something probably better than that. And first of all, you couldn't do a full-length narrative history in 200 pages or even in one book. Like, it would be at least a 2-3 volume book, and no one's going to do it because the only people who could do it are dying off, and I don't know if any new reliable people are coming along who are trained in history like that.
Narrative history of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Previously done an episode on the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn with John Michael Greer. So I will be, I guess, repeating the overview of what the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is. But your book is specific in the sense that it's telling the history of the Golden Dawn via key members, all of which are known entities now. So we have Yeats, W.B. Yeats, Florence Farr, A. Waite, Arthur Machen, Crowley, don't even need to say his first name, Pamela Coleman Smith, Charles Williams, and Dion Fortune. Probably Florence.
Charles Williams, I don't think was ever in the Golden Dawn. I think maybe he was. Am I confusing Charles Williams with George Williams? See that these old names, like, they're all the same. A.E. versus Fiona Shaw, which was a pseudonym for. Yeah, I might be getting that confused. It's I like that.
Florence Farr is probably the least well known of that lot. So, Felix, where did this come from?
This came from, I'd say the background to writing this came from Arthur Machen, I suppose. Just my deep interest and appreciation in Arthur Machen. He was
See, that's really exciting because Arthur Machen's cool. I think he actually really didn't like the Golden Dawn. I think he had a very negative opinion of the Golden Dawn. I don't think he's one of the guys who enjoyed it. But again, he's a lesser character in the Golden Dawn's history, a minor character, though not a minor character in English literature of the time.
I finished my PhD maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It was on Welsh myth and folklore in 20th century literature, and Machen featured quite heavily. And obviously he was a member only for about a year. So the Golden Dawn didn't really feature in the thesis that much, although there was a lot of sort of Celtic revival stuff going on in what I was writing about and in the Golden Dawn. But it kept on coming up. And I finished the thesis, and more authors that I take an interest in and enjoy, people like Algernon Blackwood, and Yeats, they were members as well. And I had read histories of the Golden Dawn, but there was never any kind of straightforward literary history, literary or artistic history, which is really what I've always been looking for. And I sort of realized that I could probably take a stab at writing one. Just
Yeah, and I think it looks like he's done a good job at that. But I suppose if Thames and Hudson advertised it as the first literary history of the Golden Dawn, the word literary, I think, would turn off a lot of people who might otherwise be interested. They're like, oh, I like history, but literary history, come on. Yeah, so interesting.
something that takes sort of traces all of these different lives and how this one particular, occult order, this nexus, how it influenced each of their writing and their art styles, or conversely how they influenced the Golden Dawn. So yeah, I put together a proposal and sent it to Thames and Hudson basically, and I was astonished that they took an interest.
I'm astonished. Why do you think? I mean, it's done now, so we can ask. Why do you think they did? Is there a bit of as per the title, is there a bit of a revival?
There is a bit of a revival, yes. Occult. I'm sure people listening to this will be aware that occult topics are, really popular currently. And
wait, the HERMETIC podcast doesn't know about the occult revolution, really?
Just something that takes sort of traces all of these different lives and how this one particular occult order, this nexus, how it influenced each of their writing and their art styles, or conversely how they influenced the Golden Dawn. So yeah, I put together a proposal and sent it to Thames and Hudson basically, and I was astonished that they took an interest.
I'm astonished. Why do you think? I mean, it's done now, so we can ask. Why do you think they did? Is there a bit of as per the title, is there a bit of a revival?
There is a bit of a revival, yes. Occult. I'm sure people listening to this will be.
So they think there's a revival of the Golden Dawn going on. I mean, there was more of a revival in the 90s, and then there was a revival in the early 80s by the Ciceros, and then the 90s, a number of groups, out of which I come out of that scene. And then there was a revival in the 70s. So it's more like it's a continuation. There hasn't really ever been a revival. It's just been a continuation, unbroken succession from the original Golden Dawn of adepts training each other and creating new orders linked one to the other in temples without break or cessation or anything like that. So the Golden Dawn's a remarkable tradition that has survived and thrived up to present day and is just doing in many ways better than ever before.
Will be aware that occult topics are really popular currently, and it sells books, I think is the main takeaway. So they were interested because of that, and I think the visual aspect as well, because they're primarily an art publisher. They publish big expensive art books, but also kind of trade literature books at the same time. So this is kind of a bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fair play to Dr. Taylor here for getting this project approved and getting a major company to put out a mainstream, popular coffee table literary picture book. Like, well done, sir. Well done.
It's something that looks really nice and that they can spend a lot of time making into a beautiful object.
Which it is.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Nope, it's all right.
Okay. So at the back, there is what you have named an elaborate appendix, and beyond which is so I'm kind of confusing this up. But there's the appendix, and then there's the notes and the bibliography. So
Let's be clear. I'm not going to harp on it, but the appendix is missing all the major academic scholarship of the last 30 years. Definitely of the last 20. So there's a massive aporia or gap in the appendix that renders the book, you couldn't even submit it academically, because the first thing you have to do with any academic writing is read the previous work by academics. And if you don't even read it and don't even cite it, then how can your book be a continuation of scholarship if you've ignored the scholarship that people just spent the last 20 years putting out? Majorly, of course, the major character in that revolution has been Dr. Anthony Fuller and his book Anglo-Catholic Clergy in the Golden Dawn.
I was kind of somewhat astounded by the bibliography. So what did this research process look like? Because I know just from personal interest that the deeper you get into occult stuff, the easier it is to find writers referencing a book, and the more difficult it is to find said books, to the point where you're looking for something that they admit, oh yeah, we printed this for 30 people in 1921 and it was pamphlet, but it's the most important thing related to my poetry or something. So was this a lot of archival trips, or
I'm very lucky to be writing in 2026 when a lot of this material is actually on the internet. Archive.org, the what's it called? There's a website devoted to kind of cataloging and putting out there all the esoteric periodicals from the 19th century.
I can't remember what it's called, but yeah.
So anything like that, they probably have the back catalog right there. So that was very useful. But yeah, you're right. And if you kind of dip your toe.
Yeah, this comment, it's worth addressing. Machen seems to eventually come to the conclusion that the Golden Dawn was no more than a bad joke. In some of his autobiographical writings, he sarcastically referred to it as the Twilight Star. Yeah, so he didn't go through it. It wasn't for him, and he didn't stick around. In those days, you had to get into the inner order to have any idea what the Golden Dawn was, what the purpose of the Golden Dawn which was to create people who were prepared to study and practice the spirit conjuring of grimoires and the Zed documents created in the inner order. What do you say? Modern magic is a cornerstone for so many. If only some would do a modern take of it on YouTube. Only someone would do a modern take. You're talking about the book by Don Craig, right? You asked me to do a review of Modern Magic. I haven't seen. I only know the early edition. I don't know the later edition. But if you want me to go through Modern Magic sometime, say so explicitly.
Into this pond, you get sucked in quite quickly, and you find yourself drowning, to continue the metaphor. But I only struggled here and there to access what I needed. I'm also based just outside of Oxford, so I had the Bodleian, which was extremely helpful. And I don't know how I would have done it. I would have just had to go all over, or just go into London quite a lot to go to various libraries. But the Bodleian was a lifesaver, because you could pull up any text and they could deliver it to a particular library, basically. But I mean, a lot of the kind of standard histories have a similarly in-depth bibliography to kind of start you off with. So it's, you start from there, and then you start as you go into different avenues. The material is out there.
Okay, so we're tiptoeing around the group. How would you describe the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn?
Those out there on Facebook, join the Facebook HOGD group or my Golden Dawn Tradition Facebook group, started by my buddy, and handed over to me. And we have lots of stuff there for people who want to find a temple near you from one of many different orders, or find practitioners, or just hear about what the recent scholarship has been. It's up there.
I would describe them as they were a secret society operating in London, founded in 1887. And the members met in various temples across the UK to study a curriculum of what was basically medieval occult science, alchemy, astrology, numerology, the Kabbalah, things like that.
To say they want to study medieval occult science is very reductive. It's very reductive. They called it the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn because, the core texts that they give and base their initiations on are the Chaldean oracles, which are not medieval. The Eshmetzadef, I think that might be early medieval. But the whole idea of the Hermetica and the Hermeticism within it is ancient via the Renaissance. So also occult science, I think, doesn't really apply as a term to medieval anything. Just that's me being pedantic. I'm very pedantic, and I'll keep being pedantic. I hope you don't mind.
There was a particular grade system that they went through, very similar to Masonic and Rosicrucian groups that were around in the 1880s and before that, kind of based on the Hermetic, the Kabbalistic tree of life, whereby students ascend up the grades and get ever closer to the kind of spiritual Godhead. And it was a university for some. It was a social group for others. It was a kind of literary circle for others. It was a secret society, but it had a huge influence during that period. And
I don't know why it keeps calling it a secret society. As secret societies go, it's more a magical order, and magical orders and secret societies are sort of different categories. In a secret society, the goal of the group is usually not the same as it was in the Golden Dawn, or in even groups like the SRIA or the Ordene Goldene Rosenkreuzer before that in Germany. Calling it secret society is sort of, trying to be spicy and, calling it a Hermetic order would make more sense, right? Like, you don't refer to the Benedictines as a secret society or the Jesuits as a secret society. This Golden Dawn was secret for a while, but shit happens.
Has had arguably an even greater influence since.
And when you say they met in temples, people's imaginations.
I'm glad he got that right.
Wild here. What exactly do these temples look like?
A temple was a room, basically. It was.
That was
where they met.
Let's mock our topic.
A lot of the early temples were basically rooms rented in buildings in London, basically. But a temple was the kind of physical space where groups congregated, and temples were kind of officially founded in various places in England, and that would be the sort of Golden Dawn center. The same way, I suppose, that Freemasons have their lodges.
I like that he doesn't call them lodges, which would cause there to be no question. And then he'd be like, we know what that is. He calls them a temple. And the guy's like, what's a temple mean? It's like, well, they're rooms. And then he laughs. It's like, ha ha ha. It's like, then he's, yeah, this is the Felix isn't like that though. Felix is taking his subject with a bit more reverence and respect. Yeah,
it's both the physical space, but it's also the local group. And I mean, a temple, it could look pretty extraordinary. Like we don't have any images or photographs from the 1890s original Golden Dawn temples, but
well, that's, I mean, other than all the pictures we have, I mean, we got all the pictures. I mean, we don't have any pictures other than all the pictures. To be fair, his book was probably submitted before Melissa Seam's book on the Horus Temple came out, which has the most pictures of inside of a Golden Dawn temple. So, you know, that's fair, but like there's other images that we have that would give you a very good idea of exactly what they look like. Plus they're described in detail. So, yeah. They
would have looked incredibly well designed and painted, especially second order spaces would have had like proper set design for the initiation rituals, because they were designed to kind of shock and awe and make the student go through this kind of psychological process. So, you know, they would have looked pretty amazing.
So as your book, to get into, I guess, the meat of one of the purposes of your book, as it's around the literary, artistic and creative connections to these figures that we mentioned at the start in relation to the Golden Dawn, do you see there was something specific in the Golden Dawn which drew creative people to it, or was this, you know, somewhat recursive in that this is the kind of thing that creative people will be adjacent to, they then fed into it and it grew from there? Or, you know, is there,
I mean, to be fair, Jorge, I'm sure they did meet at pubs as well. I mean, it's Britain, British culture, but you know, you got to remember they had Annie Horniman's money backing them, so they weren't on a tight budget, that's for sure. If you ever look at how much money Horniman gave them over all the years, and then it looks like not much, like, oh, he's just helped them get by, but convert it to modern currency, and you're like, yeah, it was a lot of money. You can see why it was insane that, you know, she would get expelled for cutting them off. Like, then again, maybe she wasn't doing Mathers any favors, not forcing him to. I don't know. It's a debatable point. Let me know if you want to jump on with me, Jorge.
Something specific about it, do you feel?
That's a very good question. Firstly, I think there was something special about the Golden Dawn that drew writers and artists, because this wasn't necessarily the case for previous occult groups or sort of spiritual societies.
And he's missing the reason why. They allowed men and women on equal footing. But very bohemian, very egalitarian. Previous groups weren't. So he's missing that major sociocultural point, that the Golden Dawn was progressive pioneers. Even in their attitudes, even towards sex and marriage, they were very, very progressive, even by our modern standards. Yeah, spicy secret society.
Leading up to the Golden Dawn. So I think that there is something special. It might have something to do with the sort of founders. There were three founders of the Golden Dawn, and they were Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers, especially. He was a translator and a poet. William Westcott was another of these Masonic founders. He was a translator and a scholar, and you know, I think from the very beginning, these people who started the Golden Dawn, but also some of the original members in 1888 were, these kinds of very creative people. Constance Wilde, Oscar Wilde's wife, was a very early member, and she was connected to Oscar, but she was also a poet and a children's author, and I think it kind of started from there, and perhaps a kind of snowball effect happened. It was quite common for people to be recruited from artistic circles. So
temple or Masonic temple, and Levi, Eliphas Levi, pics and descriptions. Yeah, I know, right? Like, yeah. Chameleon, good to see you. Shout out to my channel members. Become a channel member today, everybody. Thank you. Back to the show.
William Butler Yeats, the Irish poet, is quite a good example of this. He joined in 1890, and he moved in a lot of different artistic, poetic, political circles, and he kind of cherry picked here and there. And if he found that someone was interested in that kind of esoteric spirituality, let's say, he would convince them to join and sponsor their membership. And he did this with a number of people. He did it with Florence Farr, John Todhunter, the playwright, and eventually Pamela Colman Smith, Algernon Blackwood, those kinds of people.
Yeah, he's sort of, that's not the main way people joined. It wasn't mainly artists and creatives joining the Golden Dawn. More people were joining because of the theosophical connection and because of the agreement that the Westcott and Mathers made with Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society to be harmonious with each other and not restrict their members from being parts of each other's groups, especially the esoteric section of the Theosophical Society. So that was the main funnel for getting people into the Golden Dawn, as well, of course, as Masonry and the crossover of Masonry esoteric practitioners within Freemasonic temples, who were often also in not just one theosophical group, but multiple theosophical groups, because they're just more and more groups for dedicated study would spring up. Set design, don't know what you're talking about there.
So yeah, it was really a kind of people were talking about it in those kinds of circles, I think. So perhaps, obviously it was secret, but perhaps if you moved in those avant-garde circles, you might hear rumors.
So it was a known secret entity?
It's very difficult to say. I think in general it did maintain its secrecy because members had to swear oaths of secrecy to the society, under pain of some very odd supernatural stuff happening to them. But A.E. Waite, he was one of the big occult scholars of the time, and he was a member. He describes hearing rumors on the wind. He uses very elaborate kind of theatrical language to describe it. Just kind of hearing things from afar, people whispering about this hermetic group. So I think it was in there. It was in the water, and if you were interested in that kind of stuff, you'd pick it up. Maybe you'd know who to ask. The British Museum was a place where people got recruited quite a lot. The British Museum reading room, which was where the British Library didn't exist as a separate entity at that point. So all the books and manuscripts were in the British Museum, and that's where a lot of occultists were autodidacts. So they flocked to the reading room, and maybe if you were sitting on a row of desks and you looked over at your neighbor, you could see what kinds of books they were looking at. So you could, I know Mathers, Samuel Little McGregor Mathers, he recruited several people from the British Museum just because he was aware of what they were researching, and he kind of cornered them afterwards, and told them that he was a Rosicrucian, and he knows things that that should not be spoken about, and would you like to come and come along to this society? Yeah.
And Mathers would have said that because he was a member of the Societas Rosicruciana in Anglia. So he was a Rosicrucian. He wasn't being like, I'm a Rosicrucian. No, he was a Rosicrucian. And starting up a new group that was more focused on practical magic, theurgy, personal transformation, and allowed women in. And yeah, the list goes on.
So to jump into your figures, I mean, let's start with the probably the most familiar one for yourself from your PhD, as you said at the beginning, Arthur Machen. So with Machen's fiction, especially the white people, but Great God Pan, Hill of Dreams,
during the early 1890s.
You don't hear about Arthur Machen.
Yes, but a lot of those characters resemble after a year. But he progresses maybe 2 or 3 grades. I think he gets to his wife died in summer 1899, and this is seen as a kind of watershed moment when he basically stopped writing horror and moved on to more I guess Celtic mystical themes. So yeah, he's a kind of outlier, I suppose.
he doesn't stick around very long.
He does, so he leaves after a year, but he progresses maybe 2 or 3 grades. I think he gets to the practicus level, which is maybe the 3rd or 4th step up. So he did go through some grades, but then he leaves, and then he returns after the schism. He kind of joins Waite's later group, I think as a kind of friendly gesture. He was never very serious about any of it. But yeah, no, he didn't really stick around. No.
So okay, so
it sounds like, or he was flaky, is what we would call it. If you then join a group just as a gesture, that's what we call a flaky member, right? It's like, got nothing better to do, so why not?
Well, do you feel him and Waite were, if my memory serves me correctly, Waite was more of a sort of contemplative persuasion, and a bit more of a skeptic. Well, not skeptic maybe in today's parlance, but within the bounds of that scene, a bit more of a skeptic. So do you think that's why him and Waite were close? They seem to keep it a bit more at arm's length.
I wouldn't say Waite kept it at arm's length. I think they got on so well because they were both happy to disagree with each other, even though they knew that they did disagree quite strongly. Waite was more interested in the mystical side of things, in the research and in the contemplation. You're right. And Machen,
Waite was famously nicknamed Dead Waite by members of the order.
Again, he's seen as more of a mystic, in that he's interested in ways of looking at the world from a spiritual standpoint, but not. I don't think he had very nice things to say about the hierarchy of the Golden Dawn, especially.
Who knows the song? Who knows the song? I can turn off noise suppression and sing you a line, I think. Hey, wait. A.E. Waite came on too strong. That Christian stuff just don't belong. That's the song.
And the idea that knowledge is kept from students until they go through the initiations. He kind of favored a more open approach to that kind of thing. But Waite was actually, he was more mystical, but he was still in all of these groups, and he was very interested in discovering new rituals and new rites. He was more, but yeah, so he was more of a historian than an actual enthusiastic practitioner, I guess. Yeah.
Can the same be? So it seems there that Yeats.
For me, that analysis would lead me to say he was less mystical rather than more mystical. You know? What do you guys think? If someone's mostly interested in the history, you wouldn't say that's because they're more mystical. Either they're less mystical. Because otherwise you'd be doing the rituals and going deep into the work, and you wouldn't need to create new groups all the time or discover old groups and constantly write. Like Waite wrote so much, he didn't do much ritual work, it seems. I don't think he was into much personal ritual practice or magic. It doesn't seem that way to me. Maybe I'm wrong.
This might be an inverse of that to a certain degree, because it seems that the grade system for Yeats and the practice kind of directly shapes his work, especially a vision.
Yeah, I think you're right. And in Yeats.
Yeah, comparing Waite to Yeats is crazy. Like, Yeats was a hardcore magician. He bought a stone tower. I've stood in all of its rooms and, been at the turret looking out over Connemara, or where is it? Is it south of Connemara? But that Tour Balali, Yeats got so into the practice, he bought himself a wizard's tower and lived there, and it's gorgeous. And a vision was just sort of his ultimate work with his Golden Dawn adept wife, Georgie Hyde-Lees.
Yeah, the Golden Dawn system was sort of all important to him, and he took it so seriously.
I will just say to listeners before we go forward, we're going to jump around names pretty swiftly here, because there's quite a few. So, strap in.
Yeats. So Yeats, ever since he became interested in Theosophy and Irish folklore and Blake as a young man, he was always more interested in getting to the practical magic stage. So when he was in the Theosophical Society, which Madame Blavatsky led, he was always pushing for the society to have a kind of an inner society that actually strove to make magical things happen, I suppose, magical experimentation. And the other Theosophists didn't really like that, so he was basically asked to resign.
The Theosophical Society was like the gentleman scholar magicians in Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, right? Like, we don't do it, we just study it. It's like, can you study a thing like that without doing it? Not really. I mean, not really. Can you imagine? You could study meditation and never have meditated. But yeah, what do you know about a thing until you've done it? It's like Dion Fortune's book on love and marriage, her counseling of married couples. She had sex one time and all of a sudden felt like she was an expert in the field, because compared to people who hadn't had sex. And Dunning-Kruger.
So but the Golden Dawn offered this kind of ready-made structure or system, which he really took to. It kind of gave him control.
Who's him? Mr. Brightstar says Louv probably gave him nightmares, so he quit studying him. Who's him? Do you mean Felix?
Over his life and a way to control the world around him, I think. And yeah, it definitely fed into his poetry in the 90s, particularly as the decade goes on. There's a collection in 1899 called Wind in the Reeds, I think it's called. Wind in the
Well, Mr. Brightstar, to be fair, he hasn't mentioned Louv because Louv wasn't connected to the Golden Dawn. Like, there's no real connection there. I mean, you know, his studies, his books influenced later occultists, including the Golden Dawn people, but there's no through line, is what I'm saying. Just some of his stuff got included. A bunch of his stuff got included because Louv had been such a popular author in the field. So it would be very weird for him to mention Louv, is what I'm saying. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. You're not, don't feel bad. Yeah, no, like, it would just be way off field. It would be like, you know, it would be like, talking about the Vietnam War and starting off talking about the Second World War, right? It's like, oh yeah, like the wars of the 20th century all interrelate, and one leads in many ways to the conditions that create the next, or the behaviors and the people that, but, you know, off topic, it's just a bit too broad. And this is, again, major publisher Thames and Hudson books. So we got to be kind, I think. We got to be kind, especially if other publishers are going to accept manuscripts on the topic. What we want to do is encourage people who do write books, publish on the Golden Dawn, to actually find the research and find all the amazing stuff that we know about it today. You know, Tony Fuller's work, Melissa Seam's new work, all the amazing scholarship that gets included in Frater Yechida's series from Cherubim Press out of Dublin, right? The light extended series of books. A lot of the stuff there is just for practitioners and not scholarly history, but there's also, when a document is discovered or something, people write about it in there. Hermetic tablets from Nick Farrell. Tremendous original research has popped up in those. Those are hard to find, of course. But again, if you're a PhD academic, you should know how to find out who the people are, who the leaders of a living tradition are, especially when the tradition has never died out even at all, but remains thriving, bigger than ever. Find out who they are, reach out to them, ask them for information. They'll send you information, and then knowledge increases and grows, and that's how scholarship works.
Yeah, anyway, very, very influential. But a lot of his short fiction and his attempted novel that was never published, you see him really grappling with the kind of the temptation.
Yeats's attempted novel about the Golden Dawn that was never published. That's interesting. I have here one of my prized possessions, which is a rare first edition of Yeats's novel that was never published. So I'm not sure how a book by Koala Press in Dublin was never published. Isn't this beautiful? Yeah, so this is a first edition of Yeats's novel. Now, he wrote 3 versions of this novel, 2 shorter false starts. And I have the critical edition up there. There's a critical academic edition of Yeats's first novel where all 3 are assessed in parallel, sequentially, and studied and analyzed. And it's really amazing. And this is the first actual published edition. And you can go on Abe Books and find one of these, a copy of these. They're all numbered. I got number 7. Gift from a old student. Thank you, brother. We miss you. I miss you. Hope you're doing well in Saskatchewan. Is that where? Yeah. So a treasured gift from an old student and a friend. And these are beautiful. These are just absolutely beautiful. And many of my I have this text, of course, in the critical edition, so that's where I read it, because I don't want to. Many of the pages are actually still uncut. So many of the pages are still uncut. Look at that. See, it's really cool. I was kind of sad when I found out some of the pages were uncut. Only 500 of this were published. Here it is. Kula Press, Speckled Bird. Now, to be fair, it was published after Yeats' death, so he could clarify it wasn't published in his lifetime. But to say it wasn't published makes it sound like it was never published, and therefore he couldn't read it and assess it. But you could read it and assess it in a million different ways. See if there's any. Yeah, I love that these uncut pages are wild. And it's like, again, 2 little volumes. Let's see, let's show you. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? That little cloth and the frayed bits of paper. You can find this still on Abe Books. I think there's copies out there for a few $100s. It depends on the condition. This was yeah, and this was published by, I believe it was by Yeats's daughter, and I believe, or the first edition, 1973. Yeah, I mean, this was not a major publication, only 500 copies, but just beautiful little treasure preface. Yeah, published 1974 by Anne Yeats and Michael B. Yeats, who was Yeats' son and one of those prominent senators Ireland ever had, printed in Ireland. Yeats in this book, in this novel, is called Michael, and Mathers is called McLagan instead of McGregor. So I'll read you just an excerpt to so you can get a sense of the way Yeats wrote this. It's not a magical novel. It's about the Golden Dawn. The Speckled Bird is Yeats's novel about the Golden Dawn, but he's telling about the lives of people more than like analyzing every little magical nuance of the order or anything like that. So here's an excerpt from the book. She answered, "Oh no, I know it's not a good picture, of course, but after all, it is fortunate there is some kind of art for everybody. It is better that one should admire bad art than not care for any art at all. Is it not right?" He went on eagerly. "I don't agree with you at all. If people did not care for bad art, they would like good, because they would have no false taste. It must be very hard for anybody who likes that blind girl to like anything that's really beautiful." His hostess, who had caught the name of the picture, said, "You were talking about an engraving I bought in Dublin the other day. I think the girl in it is so pretty." Michael answered, that's Yeats, "You say she is pretty because she is everybody's idea of pretty. If she had been drawn by a good artist, you would have to think about it before you discovered that she was beautiful. She is just like the late Italian Madonnas my father tries to get me to admire, only a great deal worse, of course. When people gave up thinking of art as a way of saving their souls, they began to try and please people instead, and everything got vulgar. It is the same with all the arts." So there's a sense of the style of writing in Yeats's first novel that apparently was never published. But no, it is published in popular and critical editions. Yeah. And all I have is a master's degree from UBC. I guess that's not so bad. Eh?
Of adeptship of what the occult offered, which was and yeah, it definitely fed into his poetry in the 90s, particularly as the decade goes on. There's a collection in 1899 called Wind in the Reeds, I think it's called. Wind in the Rushes. Anyway, very, very influential. But a lot of his short fiction and his attempted novel that was never published, you see him really grappling with the kind of the temptation of adeptship, of what the occult offered, which was a kind of stepping back from the material world and focusing exclusively on the spiritual side of things. But also at the same time, he was a poet. He wanted to continue being a poet, and that necessarily meant that he had to be involved in material things, with the writing and the...
This is odd. It sounds like he hasn't read any of Yeats's short stories or fiction, if this is his take that Yeats was grappling with. Like, this is very different. I'm getting this would be something I'd like to talk to him about. Like, if you read Yeats's short fiction, like here's a 1914 edition of Red Hanrahan, The Secret Rose, and Rose Alchemica. And I love this. The Tale of Red Hanrahan are some great tales, and they show about the conflict with the world, but not with the struggle to reject it and just embrace spiritual things. Like, that wasn't Yeats's journey at all.
The selling of his poetry, so that there's a very clear tension in his short stories, especially. But yeah, definitely more of a magician than to someone like Waite or Machen.
I think it was more I think the thing he's sensing in Yeats's writing is that Yeats felt the call away from the physical world into the spiritual world, and struggled with that balance, which is more in line with, if any of you are Golden Dawn types, know that is one of the main challenges of the Golden Dawn system, that it asks us to step fully into the realm of spirit, but also keep one foot on land, right? That's the path of Samekh. And Samekh, even if you're a Thelemite, is very, very important to us. So Yeats wasn't. Yeah, so there's a bit more nuance there, but anyway, it's okay.
So I think it is the Wind Among the Reeds.
Yes, that's it.
That's pretty heavy on the magical symbolism. Do you? So this is 1890s, so it's sometime after.
I did a full reading of that volume of poetry on my podcast, on all podcast platforms. I believe you can check out me reading the whole Wind Among the Reeds volume of poetry of Yeats in one go.
You know, his involvement with the Golden Dawn. Do you see Yeats's poetry at this point as a conscious magical working, or is he still just kind of using this for aesthetic ends?
For a fact that Yeats was doing his poetry and even organizing his poems like musicians did on records when LPs became a thing, creating an intentional order of reading of the poetry, and did tremendous magic tied. Like, that's, some people would say he became a famous poet because of how he used poetry to do his magic. So it's a major aspect of Yeats, and poetry, he says himself, is the one thing in his life that was more important to him than his magic. But right after his poetry was his magic, and after that was probably Maud Gonne.
It's still conscious. It's still a conscious magical working. Definitely. He was really attached to the idea of the symbol very early on in his work. The symbol representing something that maybe even the poet didn't know what it represented, but it kind of communicated to the reader esoteric knowledge. He considered the symbol all important, to the extent that a human could become a symbol, which is a really interesting theory. And this continued, let's say, into the early 1900s. yeah, maybe there was a bit of a. I mean, he became more involved in the theatre scene with the Abbey Theatre, and occultism kind of, I guess.
Again, which Annie Horniman funded. So she was funding Mathers, then she started funding this theater in Dublin. I've been to the Abbey Theatre, and I've seen a lot of the plays that were put on there, staged in Galway, where I lived. I saw all of John Millington Synge's plays done all in one day, back to back. It was incredible. Thank you to a old friend for that.
Yes, he took a step back with that, especially when the original Golden Dawn sort of schismed and broke apart, and he was involved in a lot of that political infighting.
Yeah,
I think
and he tries to kind of reform it, right, in line with his Irish nationalist.
Yeah, he tries to form a completely different sort of Celtic order of mysteries, is what he called it.
That had nothing to do with schism. Him and Mathers and Moina were working on that from the beginning. They almost used Celtic god forms and not Egyptian god forms in the Golden Dawn, but there was no historical images of the Celtic gods for colors and design. So they went with the Egyptian gods, which were then all the rage that they had images of, and also they're zoomorphic. They take on animal shapes. So that made it more easy to connect with the energies and ritual work. But yeah, no, the Celtic Mysteries was going on the whole time. Golden Dawn Adepts throughout this period were doing work in the Celtic Mysteries. All that work's published, and yeah, so it has nothing to do with the schism and then Yeats trying to create a Celtic order. No, Yeats helped create the Stella Matutina with Felkin and helped build the magical branch of after the interregnum period of the Morgan wrote,
based along Golden Dawn lines. Same kind of grade system, similar rituals, just with names switched to kind of.
That's not true. He hasn't read them. He has not even read these. None of that's true. They completely changed the structure of the initiations, and so they're not even similar. There's not even similarities between them. And like they start with water with the initiation of the cauldron. And then there's actual psychic tests in the middle of the initiations, which there's never in Golden Dawn rituals. So if someone reads the ritual in advance, they can therefore never go through it. So Yeats put something in them. So if you read it in advance, you can then never have that experience, which is really interesting. I wonder if he learned a lesson from the Golden Dawn publication of the rituals through the Horus trials.
Irish deities and things like that. So yeah, I think there was a kind of falling out of love with the Golden Dawn at that point, but
that was when things just kicked into high gear with the Stella Matutina and Felkin. Yeats was the imperator. Like that's when things really kicked into high gear, and the Cromlech Temple was founded, and people were members of all the groups. They were all like. Wow, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry, brother Felix. Oh man, that's like the opposite. What you're saying is the opposite of what the case was.
He continued to be a member and remained a member until the mid 1920s. So he's kind of one of the longest continuous members, maybe 30 years.
It's like you are saying he quit in the 20s. I've never heard that. I've never seen any evidence of that. Certainly, I think all the evidence points to the opposite of that. But maybe he did officially quit. I don't think so. I think he stayed a very respected senior elder of the Stella Matutina.
And what was the reason for his final departure?
There was none.
I think at that point he was becoming.
Where was it? Prove it.
He'd gotten married. He'd had children. He'd
gotten married to another Golden Dawn adept and initiated the vision workings, and was having kids. This is so wild. This has gotten really weird.
Becoming obsessed with spiritualism and these kind of communications.
See, if you knew anything about the Golden Dawn, you'd know that they were already into that. The spirit, it wasn't getting obsessed with spirit. No, they were doing that sort of work all the time. It's because people have no understanding what's actually done in the Golden Dawn. It's like when I was in this roundtable and it said to these academics, they said that the Golden Dawn has nothing to do with healing or Rosicrucianism or anything like that. I'm like, that's all it is like healing is the main thing, really. Theurgy, spiritual healing, psychism is core to the inner order practices. And the academics told me I was wrong. They're like, no, none of that's true. I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. This is crazy. What the hell? Oh my, no, the vision working was Yeats and his wife, two Golden Dawn adepts of, Yeats of the highest level, doing advanced Golden Dawn practices and techniques to develop. They were putting the icing on the cake, not starting a new experimental recipe.
From the spirit world with his wife that he was that really formed the backbone of his poetic output for sort of the early 20s, I suppose. And yeah, I'm not sure. I think there's just a sense that he didn't need it anymore, that he kind of
How you're claiming Yeats left his order that he helped create with Falcon? Prove it. Show any evidence of that.
Grew it in a sense. I mean, there's always references to it, to this Kabbalistic society. There's a throughout.
Oh, so he left it but kept referencing it
throughout his autobiography and beyond. And there are suggestions that he was still interested in its history.
How about he was still in it? You're claiming he left something. It was zero evidence, brother. Like, why are you assuming this is so weird?
Well into the later decades of his life. So I don't think he ever truly gave up on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, off the
very weird.
Off the back of Yeats, because I'm trying to think of a natural way to segue into Florence Farr, who, as I think you kind of gave me a nod of agreement at the start, is the least known of all the figures in the book.
Are you going to mention that they were
and
lovers?
Do you feel this is because she's largely, if she's known, she's largely known through her relationships with Shaw and Yeats?
She was a super famous actress of her time.
Definitely.
She was very famous in her own right. Very famous.
The very few.
It was like having a celebrity in their order.
Treat her. They come to her as an actress, as one of George Bernard Shaw's women, basically, that he takes an interest to and tries to sort of develop their careers. Basically, takes them under his wing. So she's a Shavian woman, but also yes, she was one of Yeats's. I think there's speculation about whether they had a relationship or not, but there was definitely some feeling on Yeats's part. So yeah, she's either a Yeats woman or a Shaw woman. But I suppose
a really demeaning way to talk about Florence Farr. I mean, she became one of the most powerful and effective magicians in the order. She created the Sphere Group with Alan Bennett for the conjuration of Tatartara to physical appearance in the vault. I believe it was in the vault, yeah. And then became the Imperator, was the head of the order when Mathers was in France and expelled Mathers. So she was a major force, major governing and directing force in the order. And the way they talk about her as like being Shaw's woman, or maybe later on one of Yeats's women. Yeats was a virgin until he was like 35. In his diaries, he would talk about, how he preferred peyote over hashish, and how, he would masturbate, but it would make him really physically ill, so he didn't like to do it. And eventually his friends were like, okay, dude, you got to get laid. And they hooked him up with their friend, Olivia Shakespeare, lovely lady. And they had an official affair, romance. That's what you did in those days. If you wanted to have sex outside of marriage, you would arrange a relationship that was most sort of not public, but semi-public, right? And then after that, Yeats got to enjoy some loving with Maud Gonne, his unrequited love, and I guess he got to requite that love. And then I believe he did have a little thing with Florence Farr at some point. But think of what good friends and colleagues they were for so long, for decades, running this order while Mathers was away and Westcott was constantly busy and going to and fro with his duties as London coroner, and then all the drama around the papers and the taxi cab and his resignation. And then, yeah,
in occult circles, she's.
I wish they didn't talk about Florence Farr in this way. If you want to hear about Florence Farr, go read Mary K. Greer's Women of the Golden Dawn.
She is revered as a very important member of the original Golden Dawn. Someone who rose very quickly through the ranks and took on a leadership role, several leadership roles, and arguably helped to bring it down in the end. She had her own kind of interests within occultism.
He's talking about the Sphere Group. She didn't help to bring it down. What are you talking about? She helped it. They got rid of Mathers when he expelled Horniman, so they got rid of him. And then Mathers, through Crowley, tried to bring it down, but the groups just divided into Waite's people, Felkin's people, and then Mathers' people. That's what happened. They just split apart into more functional groups, focused on what they wanted to focus on.
And this was not looked upon very kindly by some of the members, and there was a lot of arguments surrounding it. And this kind of helped to bring the original order crashing down. So,
such a pejorative way to describe that complex period. What are people saying in the comments? All right. I'm prepared to accept that Crowley was given a 5/6 token, or at least got the passwords. Otherwise, that's I mean, but what's that even mean? Hey, Nick Farrell. It's Nick Farrell, people. Yeah, passwords otherwise matter. No, let them into the vault. See the vault in the UK. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let me know if you want to jump on stream, Nick, and shoot the shit with me and watch this. You're always welcome, brother. Got to be very late at night there, though, in Italy.
But yeah, like in sort of the mainstream literary work.
And to what you're saying, Nick, also, like, I always think, tell me what you think of this. I think of it in terms of, like, Mathers was in desperate need of money at the time because he'd been cut off. Crowley shows up with his he hasn't blown his entire fortune yet, his inheritance. So Mathers is like, okay, well, you see what you can do back in England, and I'll give you doff you on the hat is nominal 5/6 or whatever, give you passwords or whatever. Yeah. But then they say he did do a Hierophant role for at least one neophyte initiation afterwards. So, it was a complicated, chaotic time, I'm sure, especially when Berridge was in charge.
She's not known about at all because she wrote one novel. She wrote two novels, which didn't make much of an impression, to be honest. I'll
try and do you guys proud.
She translated a few occult texts. She wrote journalism for the New Age magazine in the early 20th century. But other than that, she is quite an obscure figure. And yet there's so much about her that warranted a whole chapter and part of another chapter. Because she is also a kind of through line. She carries the Golden Dawn story.
I really am. I love that he's written this book. I love that it's beautiful. I really hope he will talk to me. But how amazing would it have been if he had talked to us, to the Golden Dawn communities, before writing the book? Like, imagine the stuff we could have given him to put in it, right? Not made up stuff that we believe or got from the spirits or UPG or anything. Just like good stuff. like, it's crazy the amount of good stuff that he could have been given. And the awareness he could have gotten from just a few several hour long conversations with people like yourself, Nick, or Tony. Tony Fuller probably would have taken his call, or at least written lengthy emails. Imagine this guy had just gone into either of the main Golden Dawn Facebook groups, Golden Dawn Tradition or Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, right? Like, sure, they're just run by, you know, well, I'm not gonna say who, but you know, but they have all this stuff. Like, he could have used the search feature and found a lot of stuff written by you and Tony and Pat. And there's so much stuff, man. These academics need to wake up.
Definitely in the 1890s.
So what is that through line? In what sense does she carry it?
She carries it because she was brought into the society by Yeats, so she has that connection there from the beginning. But she seemed to be a very dedicated member, and a kind of acolyte of Mather's. She was very close to him, at least initially, and it was Mather's that gave her the role of premonstrator.
Nick Farrell says they had only 3 or 4 members. Who had only 3 or 4 members? Sorry, I've lost. There's a delay in when you hear me to when I see your comment. So I sometimes, in comments, it's important to include context. Otherwise, I don't know what the reference is to because I've moved on. And Tony helped, with your book. Tony's, I mean, shout out to Tony and my Dr. Fodder, Nicholas Goodrick Clark, who guided Tony through his dissertation on the Golden Dawn and mine on Evelyn Underhill up until his death. God rest you, Nicholas.
Premonstratrix, I suppose, which is the feminine, which is a kind of overall.
So he doesn't know that the premonstratrix, or the premonstrate, is actually sort of the highest. Is the highest of the Golden Dawn. It's not even the Imperator. Whoever's in charge of teaching is the top dog. That's the 7-4 Chesedian position. So she wasn't. He's underselling her still, but at least he knows how valuable she was.
Teaching role. In that would be in the mid-90s, in 1896, I think.
So within like 8 years of the order's beginning, she was in charge of teaching. That's how awesome Florence Farr was. And in my opinion, her pushing the whole sphere group thing was because she wanted to take the magic even further with Alan Bennett, who's no slouch, and a few others. So, she wasn't just in charge of teaching. She was pushing magical practice beyond probably any point that it had been taken, maybe since Hockley or cats like that.
So she kind of had an instrumental.
Oh, there was only 3 or 4 members when Crowley played Hierophant. Yeah, that makes sense. I never noticed that fact. Because that period where Crowley got to do Hierophant. I mean, I'm personally glad he got to do Hierophant one time, because as much of a rascal as Crowley was, at least he got to like really have a sense of that. It's an indescribable experience, of course, but yeah, lots of people make that mistake. Everyone wants a sword. A lot of people have Nick Farrell, you'll like this. A lot of people have in the past, on alt magic days, would diss me for being, such a young imperator. But I didn't want to be imperator, not because I didn't want to be in charge of the temple, but it's because I was already premonstrator of our temple and sub-premonstrator for our whole order. So at 22, I was sub-premonstrator under TDL for our whole order, and that wasn't by accident. They didn't. That was consent by consensus of our order with thousands of people in it. So, becoming imperator for me as of temple duty was a step down. I was still had to be a praemonstrator, of course, but like I didn't get to focus on teaching anymore. All of a sudden I had to like deal with unruly fraters and sorors who wanted status without doing work, and that kind of drama. Yeah. Everyone wants the sword. Yeah, I like that, Nick. I'm never gonna let you get to bed, am I? You're not gonna get any sleep. Even Crowley admired Farr, Nick says, and the whole getting Mercury to physical. Yeah, because Bennett was the reason Crowley probably became a decent magician rather quickly, was because of Bennett. And then of course Crowley admired Florence Farr. I mean, just reading Florence Farr's Enochian work is intimidating. It's intimidating. Then you read her Egyptian mysteries. I mean, what a that's a woman you would have wanted to meet. And she was in all of like most of Yeats's plays, doing the vibrational singing, the chanting, chaunting, CHAUNTING. It's just an old spelling of chanting, but they put a whole psalter thing to it. Very cool stuff.
Role in what was being taught. She wrote a lot of the flying roles, several of the flying roles, which were kind of order texts, I guess, like
Some of the
mini
most advanced
lectures, I
ones.
suppose, that were given to order members. And then she was involved with quite prominent members, Aleister Crowley, when he came.
Yeah, a while ago I was just rereading. Nick Farrell again says they lived together for about a year. I was rereading the cool Crowley section while living with Bennett, and it's crazy. So there's 3 rooms, and one room was all white, one room was all black, and in the middle there was a middle room. And then in Crowley's autohagiography, he's talking about, quite disparagingly of Bennett, is like, oh, he's too sick to stay here. Yeah, he wants me to send him away and give him more money, blah, blah, blah. It's like, what a fucking asshole, Crowley. Like Crowley wrote his autohagiography when he was like my age, 45, I think. Like he was like, yeah, which is considered young to write an autobiography. And it was never published in Crowley's lifetime. So that means he never really got a chance to edit out any stuff that you would want edited out because it wasn't getting published. Several, not that many. Okay. Several. Yeah.
And Alan Bennett. She participated in rituals with them. She formed her own ritual group known as the Sphere, which, as I said, had something to do with why the original society broke apart. So there is this. I think she.
Is that true? Is the Sphere group why the society broke apart? I think that is a scapegoat used by historians, but again, I would defer to others on that.
Yeah, her story sticks pretty close to the first decade.
Go off and want to do their own things.
That's right. Yeah, which was frowned upon.
Okay. I don't agree with any of that.
Do you think that's just because they're all such ultimately independent,
creative
creative
Nick
people?
Farrell. Much love, brother. Ciao. Buonasera. Bonne nuit. I don't know. Au revoir. Guten Abend. Slan. EOY. Have a good night's sleep. Much love from all of us to your wife, and thanks for coming on the podcast. I've never had a podcast hit 1,000 views in the first day before. So kudos to you and Paula, who really brought your A game, especially for her first time on podcast. Like, boom, knocked it out of the park. So thanks, guys. Thanks to both of you for doing an awesome and truly worthy episode 120. 120.
Sort of get the message, and then Yeats wants to do his.
That's what I thought. The Sphere group closed long before the order split. Yeah. It's been a while since I focused on the Sphere group stuff. It was just more like, oh, we shouldn't do operations that don't include the whole inner order or only are, you know, sub-elitist or something. But it's like, come on, if a group of adepts want to do rituals together, that was never a problem, really. Not really. Maybe if they were using the vault, maybe it was, or just maybe some people whined because they weren't included. But, you know, Mathers and a bunch of Golden Dawn adepts, if you read the Celtic Mystery papers, Yeats was getting together with other adepts all the time and doing Celtic Mysteries work with them, sending it to Mathers. You can see notes written by other adepts under Yeats's notes saying, don't mention this, it's an inner order secret. Like when it comes to visualizing yourself go into a tarot card, there's a really cute note by another adept saying to Yeats, oh, we can't mention this though publicly, of course, you know, because that's a top secret inner order thing. So like they were doing work all the time.
Celtic thing, and Farr wants to do the sphere, and there's just comes a point where everyone wants to do, and Dion Fortune, of course, does her own thing as well.
Yeah, that's a very.
It's all jumbling it all together. No, like people magicians who practice magic in groups together do different things. We do operations, we do rituals, we do ceremonies, we do stuff. It's not every single operation we do is not creating a new group. It's creating a new magical project because we're in the same group.
Good point. I think they all had quite strong personalities, and yeah, to an extent, try to pursue their own interests, either inside or outside the Golden Dawn.
I don't think they all had strong personalities. I think we talk about the ones who had strong personalities, and like in modern magical orders, most of the great adepts, a lot of them, or great members or magicians, you never hear about because they're busy just doing their thing, right? The idea that they're all these strong people, it's like, no, it's like there's a few of those people usually around. I wasn't even one of those people in my order. I was one of the people who kept his head down and did his work, and that's why I got given so many responsibilities, because I didn't go on alt magic and debate and flame wars. I didn't care about that stuff. I was busy being an A+ student in high school, getting into my master's degree then, and, you know, keep doing the work. That's what most people are doing. Look at the fact that you never hear about Brodie-Innes really that much publicly in the public drama stories about the Golden Dawn. Was that because he was a slacker? Don't think so. No, because he was busy doing a ton of work.
And yeah, I think Israel Regardie says this in his book about the Golden Dawn, that there were such strong kind of willful personalities that you know the original society could not withstand all of them trying to do their own thing at the same time. Yeah, and
that's kind of an adorable point of view coming from Regardie, of all people, but I don't really want to get into that. Yeah,
and Farr's own project was part of the downfall, I suppose.
In what sense was it part of the downfall?
It wasn't.
So
tell us how it wasn't.
Her going off and basically organizing rituals.
See, this is surprising because usually this is where academics have their strength, is timelines. They look at dates and see if things line up, and they're like, oh, that doesn't line up at all. But he skipped that step in the process here, unfortunately, which is going to lead to all these people thinking a bunch of stuff that isn't true. That, like, the Golden Dawn Schism was presaged by Florence Farr's sphere group, by a bunch of adepts wanting to do adept stuff that they were not just taught to do and told to do, but tested on doing. Like, we're tested on evocation in 5-6. So why would me and other adepts practicing those rituals and conjurations lead to a problem? The only thing it would lead to is someone then observing you do it to see that you can do it and passing your examination.
With,
am I saying too much?
Other groups of Golden Dawn members, there seem to be at least 2 or 3 different sphere groups. It's very difficult to tell from the records if there were 1 or 2 or 3. or how many numbers there were at one point. But
which records make it hard to detect that? I wonder what records.
It was because of this that people higher up sort of took issue with. They were using the order Rumours, for example, for these practices. It was also found that some of the rituals they were using were faulty, whatever that means. I think either they weren't drawn correctly or they weren't being practiced correctly, and that.
You're trying to say that adepts practicing the rituals that they are taught is somehow faulty. I mean, make it make sense. And also using the rooms, using the temples. Of course, they're using the whole, like, that's why they built the temples. They didn't have like weekly classes in them, as far as I know, like some orders have done today and in the upgraded versions of the Golden Dawn, shall we say. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, this is a very weird point of view.
And that could supposedly let in evil spirits or evil forces. And yeah, this was sort of brought up in various meetings, and the
I think it was more that there was members at that point that were still very uncomfortable with some of the inner order practices of magic. There's people that from Theosophy and Masonry especially, and we know this from Melissa Seam's work as well as Nick Farrell's work, there's members that join and are like, yeah, we don't really want all of this magic. We're like, just like the Horus Temple, like didn't really want women. They didn't really want women in it. They're like, no, we'll let a few in, but then no more.
The opposing parties, the kind of gap between them grew and grew and grew. And this was, yeah, I mean, people.
My Scottish is poor, Brian, but I can recognize, Dina as people. Same word in Irish. Yeah. Kanasatatu. I don't know how to say good evening in Scottish.
People generally think that Aleister Crowley's involvement
Fosker Maya
with
Dina, Aegina.
Trying to break into the order's rooms in London in I think 1900. At the beginning of the 20th century, when he tries to break into their rooms and Mathers is expelled, and
that's not what happened.
That's the kind of the schism. That's when things break apart. But it was also what Florence Farr was up to.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, what he's just said is one of the sloppiest things I've ever heard an author on a Golden Dawn history book say. So, Felix, I love you, but what the hell, man? What the hell? Like, the conflation of events is so shocking. That would be like saying, let's go back to the Second World War. That would be like saying, well, as a result of Pearl Harbor being bombed and the Americans storming the beach of Normandy and Russia attacking Germany, the Germans decided to invade Poland and start the Second World War. All those things happen, but not in that order, not for those reasons, and not in that way. That's what he just said, something along those lines. That's how jumbled it is.
Yes.
Yeah. So this kind of frames Crowley in a different light, actually, for me, because we have, Yeats is kind of already a poet. Machen's already a fiction horror writer. Waite is already doing his research. Crowley, he's a mountain climber. He's very privileged. But, what's this like for him? And he's a dreadful poet. I'll say that before we even go in. What is this really? What from your research, I guess? What is because this is
well, he wasn't a dreadful poet. He was a immature poet. He hadn't developed his poetry to beyond the sort of the stage of saying he would write things because he could write things. His poetry would be like, oh, just because you can rhyme stuff, just because you can put all these words together doesn't mean you should. He didn't mature in that sense. And I think it's because Crowley didn't write his poetry for an audience. He wrote it more for himself. So that's my take.
The big hoo-ha, I guess, as you've just said, about the downfall of the Meta-Golden Dawn. What does, Crowley's arrival and landing kind of really look like?
What does it look like? It looked like,
describing it as a downfall. It's not a downfall. So when the Golden Dawn schismed, had the interregnum period that Morgan wrote, and then the three orders breaking off from it, that wasn't the downfall of it, because it broke off. The Golden Dawn was a seed, and it was planted and germinated. And when it germinated, it had multiple sprouts that reached up into the sun, and that continued the tradition and the core essence of that seed into the world in too many ways to count, up to present day.
as you say, a privileged young man straight out of Cambridge who was looking for power and influence in these kinds of circles. And I think he was drawn to a kind of spiritual, a view of the world where, you know, there were people kind of higher up who had these occult powers who would be able to invest him with those powers. He wanted those occult powers quickly, I suppose, and people like Mathers he saw as being he saw Mathers especially as someone who could get him those powers quickly, ascend the ranks, because Mathers supposedly had access to supernatural beings, communication with the kind of highest orders, the supernatural adepts, whoever they may be. So I think Crowley saw the Golden Dawn as a way of getting power. I think he was a poet before he joined. Yes, quite a bad poet. He wrote in the kind of aesthetic popular genres of the time, and he just churned out all these privately printed collections that either weren't reviewed or were reviewed quite badly, so I'm not sure how much the Golden Dawn appealed to him as an artistic society, as a place where he could maybe develop his artistic powers.
But if you read more Crowley, you would know the answer to that question, because he talks about it a lot. So I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying. And Felix seems like a lovely young scholar who really knows his stuff when it comes to the literary influences. Like, he's not mentioning a lot of the stuff I've seen in this book since I got it yesterday, and I only had time to look over it a little bit. But like, he's not talking, the questions are not touching on his expertise or what this book's actually about at all. The questions are more focused on just generic Golden Dawn history questions, which this book's not about that. This guy doesn't have expertise in that at all. He's got extremely cursory knowledge of the history of the Golden Dawn. What he does have is the knowledge that produced this book, which is literary influences and how they came out of certain 5 or 6 members of the Golden Dawn. That's what this is, a very specific book outlining.
I mean, he definitely saw his poetry later on as being kind of magical acts. So like the physical objects being kind of magical objects with particular emphasis on the color and the shape of the text. But I don't think when he joined in 1898 that was particularly on his mind. I think he was just a privileged,
because he didn't have access to those teachings, because those aren't in the outer order. I mean, did you study the curriculum at all? Doesn't sound like it. Which is a shame, since this is the one time in history where the actual curriculum and all that knowledge is available. Go check it out. I wish I had a trailer promo I could play for Caribbean Press. I should make one, but they take a long time. Hopefully AI will help us make some video promos faster, but I don't know how to do it, and I don't really like AI at all. But it does make cool thumbnails way faster. It would take I used to spend sometimes 10, 15 hours on a thumbnail only to get 50 views on the video. So, you know, let's do a, you know, who knows a lot about the Golden Dawn while I go pee quickly, is Nick Farrell, and him and his very intelligent juggernaut of a wife, Paula, recently did a podcast with me. And if you haven't checked it out, you should. Let me play you the trailer I made for my episode with Nick and Paula Farrell, who are absolutely exemplary leaders of the Golden Dawn tradition today, and with complete and with links going straight back to the very original order, so they know what they're doing. And check this out. Go listen to their podcast. I'll be right back. Welcome to Magic Without Fears, the Hermetic Podcast with Frater RC. My truly honored guests today are Paula and Nick Farrell. Nick is the author of many popular works in the Golden Dawn tradition and modern occultism, and now they have been writing the Lord Manticore occult training blog, which, if you're not following its monthly articles, you're falling behind. Stay tuned for Complete Geomancy by Nick, his newest release. Holy art thou, Lord of the universe. Holy art thou whom nature hath not formed. Holy art thou, the vast and the mighty one, Lord of the light and of the darkness. The Arcane Research Society returns to bring esoteric scholarship and practice in 2026 with 2 major events held in Austin, Texas. Register for an annual membership and attend online or in person all of our annual events, including June 13th, our spring workshop, and November 6th through 8th, EnochiaCon, our full esotericism conference. The ARS Spring Workshop features 3 workshops led by Jason Louv, Craig Williams, and Frater RC. Spend a whole day in downtown Austin, Texas, enjoying these hands-on deep dives with experts in their fields. Register today for all live events included with ARS annual membership, Spring Workshop, and EnochiaCon, which features too many amazing presenters to name. Sign up today at arcaneresearchsociety.com. And we're back.
boy seeking power.
Yeah, and then it all blows up. But it's not to do
Little
with
blows up.
But it's not to do with him. Not really. Maybe.
No, he was kind of, he put himself to use. He was Mathers's ambassador, I suppose. Mathers, who was holed up in Paris and was kind of governing the Golden Dawn from afar.
Mathers, who was running a temple in Paris with members, with his wife,
becomes more and more paranoid, and agrees to let Crowley go off to England and kind of invade the second order rooms and take.
He sent Crowley to England as revenge because he was angry at being expelled when he threw a hissy fit over Horniman cutting him off financially.
He's pretty
Sort of.
young, right? Crowley's
He's pretty young.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, he sent Crowley there to hurt them because they were going to be just fine without him, in my opinion. No shade on Mathers. I mean, his work, yeah. But like at that time, the guy needed a timeout.
What's he in his early 20s, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, you can imagine how this would look to other older members, this cleanly shaven youth who has, you know, apparently no experience, trying to take everything away from them. Yeah.
And
An expelled chief adept using unwitting 24, 25-year-old members to commit crimes against the group they've been expelled from. Never heard of that happening before.
yeah, at the same time, Crowley maybe is sort of the most systematic inheritor of all of, you know, like, I'm not sure, in terms of the figures that we're dealing with, I'm not sure of, or really any others, I'm not sure of any others who wrote so extensively on the systems and kind of continued that. But do you see that as a sort of artistic continuation, or do you see that more so as Crowley, like, right, I'm going to take this and now this is my thing?
I think as I kind of mentioned, as he goes along, the art and the occultism, it becomes difficult to distinguish between them. So I don't think it's hard to say it was one thing or the other. It was definitely a kind of melding of both. And you're right, he sought to improve on the Golden Dawn. I think he took what was useful and altered it to kind of suit his own system, I think.
Yeah, he didn't try to improve on the Golden Dawn because he didn't understand the Golden Dawn. He hadn't been trained as an adept. He didn't complete his work. He didn't get the actual material, which was all in the Inner Order. Crowley had no idea about how the Golden Dawn worked. So he took what fragments he had and gotten from Bennett and other people and Mathers and speciated it into his own system to efface and destroy the Golden Dawn so that people would then study Golden Dawn practices via Crowley, but in a manner that wouldn't work in reverse, that couldn't be backwards compatible with the Golden Dawn tradition. That's why it's speciated. He fundamentally changed what it was and its parameters and practice so that to destroy what it came from. So it was it's an extremely hostile thing to do, to take someone's teachings and alter them or warp them in a way that destroys the initial intent, the initial paradigm, framework, goal. The goal, that's very important. Really changed the goal of the work. Like, for example, he took the Enochian system of the Golden Dawn and Mathers' papers on the Heptarchia and on aether scrying and traveling, and turned it from a sublunar Malkuthic thing, the aethers emanating out of Malkut, around Malkut, into this journey up to Lil, up to Kether, which is not what Enochian has ever been and not what it was even in the Golden Dawn. So Crowley completely remade that in his own image to suit his own claims to the highest grade of Absissimus through various fun explorations and adventures in the desert, which is a story for another time, unless you already know it.
And that was with the group that he formed in 1909, I think, called the AA. That was based along Golden Dawn lines in terms of grade structure, titles, initiation rituals, but with changes to suit his own ideas.
Crowley went so far as when you enter the first grade of the AA, you're told that you have completed the entire Golden Dawn system and that you should call yourself a very honored frater or sorer and make all the Golden Dawn tools as if you're a Golden Dawn adept, even though you're only first grade in the AA. That is the act of a very hostile and angry person. So he's angry because he never got to learn the inner mysteries, the main teachings of the Golden Dawn. He never got to get trained or practice them or be initiated, really. So he, out of anger and pettiness, distorted it. Right? Now, did that system become something beautiful for many people I love and care about today? Sure. But let's not use that to justify what Crowley did out of malice.
And then does it Malice sues him?
Mather sues him, yeah. Mather sues Crowley when Crowley publishes part of the Golden Dawn rituals in his
It's like, they treat it like it's a funny thing, but people have asked for my writing or stolen my writing and then published it and then said they wrote it. And then I have to hold up the original or hold up a letter that they wrote to a family member, tricking them into sending my original work so they could publish it, like crazy stuff. So what Crowley did was vile and it shows early on what a horrible human being he was.
Magazine, The Equinox, and then threatens to publish more in the second issue. And that's when Mathers sues Crowley basically for infringement of copyright. And
after everything Mathers did for Crowley, like the only reason Crowley is even considered an adept is because of Mathers calling him one. Right? That's it. If Crowley hadn't gotten that little doff on the head from Mathers nominally, then he would have just been some flunky starting his own order with stolen teachings, and then he would have been a true reprobate in that sense of a charlatan even. But because Mathers acknowledged him and sent him as his emissary and gave him that nominal status, people have respected Crowley to some degree after that. Like Berridge let him be a hierophant of a temple for an initiation with 4 people present, apparently, right? And that gave Crowley the credibility. That's all the credibility Crowley got, and used it and took it as far as he could to hold himself up as this grand Ipsissimus in his own order and change everything. Again, I'm not judging what Crowley created or what it's become, but I'm judging certainly how he created it and the damage he intentionally did. Like the betrayal to Mathers, and betrayal's the worst. Dante puts it as the lowest level of hell, right? So Crowley, after all Mathers did for him, completely stabs him in the back. It's shocking. It shows that Crowley had no real love and respect for, I think, anyone at all other than himself. Like, look at Jason Louv's psychological breakdown of Crowley using technology, shall we say. It is fantastic. Go to Jason Louv's channel, check out his Crowley deep dive. I think it's like 2. It's long, but he was clearly he was at least a narcissist, possibly a psychopath.
Loses. Yeah.
I can't remember what the argument is. Is the argument that was always public knowledge or something like that? I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
You just wrote a book on it, man. Come on.
It has something to do. Oh, I can't remember. No.
I know
it gets very complicated.
Yeah, I know Crowley's horse and cart set on fire.
Right.
Which
yeah.
He believed was a curse or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's right. A lot, especially when he was on his way to England to take control of the Golden Dawn. All of this stuff started happening. Like his taxis were late or delayed, or
almost like he was going against his true will and therefore had the force of the universe against him.
And he believed it was all. He was being cursed from afar by the order members, basically. Yeah.
Do you think there's any sort of
by the Order members, not maybe by the Lord of the Universe and his own higher soul, who he was betraying the vow he made thereto and rallying for machinating. Is that a word? Machinating for Mather's support to override that of the Order. It's so messy and so dirty and so slimy. It's so slimy. Like, God, even if the Order didn't have to break apart, it's a good thing they did, because they needed a restart after that, after Crowley.
key things people get wrong about the Crowley Golden Dawn relationship? Or was he really just this
Oh, I've lost sound on
insecure
this.
and
1 second, let me see what I have in my audio settings. Oh yeah, my headset just disconnected. Wait, shouldn't have. Oh, I see. It's jumping to a secondary device. 1 second.
boisterous?
I think he saw the value in it. He wasn't simply being he wasn't simply trying to stir things up because he had no respect for the system. He definitely hero worshipped Mathers initially, and that changed quickly, and he kind of left Mathers behind. But the Golden Dawn was very important to him as this initial step on his path to what he saw as greater things, and that's why he never leaves it behind. He's always bringing it back up. He's always recycling old stories. He loves to, even in 1917, when he's writing his first novel, that's what, almost 20 years after he leaves the Golden Dawn, he's kind of libeling all of these old magicians that he'd met in the 90s, and kind of making fun of the Golden Dawn.
I think that's where the term dead weight comes from for A.E. Waite. And what did he call Yeats? He called Yeats something, and he had nicknames for all of them.
While at the same time, owing a lot to what he learned there.
Well, speaking of gold, I actually didn't realize I had my pack right here. Speaking of the influence of the Golden Dawn, which is known, we finally get through to Pamela Coleman Smith and the Rider Waite. I do on a deck, yeah. It's a bit of a funky deck now. I need a new one. It's gotten a bit sassy.
Right.
Yeah, it's taking the piss, to be honest. What's the story with the Rider Waite Tarot in relation to the GD?
Well, the Rider Waite Tarot came about when A.E. Waite, who had formed his own order, which he called the Independent and Rectified Rite of the Golden Dawn, to give it its most complicated title. He decided that a new tarot needed to be designed, kind of based on his own study and interpretation of the tarot, because he'd been researching it quite heavily, and he identified Pamela Coleman Smith, who she was at that, which he called the Independent and Rectified Rite of the Golden Dawn, to give it its most complicated title. He decided that a new tarot needed to be designed.
Waite did not decide a new tarot need to be designed. That was W.B. Yeats, who had an idea for creating a tarot deck that comes out of the Golden Dawn that would be based on the Welsh Grail mysteries. And this is known by the research of Robert Parisius, who was the secretary in Ireland of the Theosophical Society, as well as the Yeats archivist. And he did a lecture. You can find it. It was released from the 80s, but only in 2020 on Adam McLean's YouTube, Roger Parisius, Golden Dawn. You'll find it. I have it on a playlist on my YouTube, actually. And so, yeah, Waite didn't come up with the idea for the deck. Yeats did, and gave it to Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith, Pixie Smith, his fellow adepts in the Golden Dawn, and said, hey, you guys should do this together. I'm too busy, getting my, doing plays and wooing my true love and getting ready to win a Nobel Prize of Literature. So,
kind of based on his own study and interpretation of the tarot, because he'd been researching it quite heavily, and he identified Pamela Coleman Smith, who had been, she was at that stage, she was a young artist who had joined the original Golden Dawn in, I think, 1901, and had followed Waite into his new mystical order. But she never seemed to take it very seriously at all. She kind of languished in the lower grades. But she was this extraordinary artist, this synesthetic artist who, when she heard particular pieces of music, she could see colors and shapes and kind of visions, I suppose, and drew and painted based on them. So she had this kind of strange esoteric way of painting, and she was seen as a kind of modernist artist in some circles. And Waite, I think, saw her abilities, and also saw
Yeats saw her abilities,
that she could be kind of guided, or sort of not manipulated, but kind of she wouldn't he could feed her knowledge, his knowledge, while she kind of did the manual work, basically.
And that was Yeats's idea, that they should work together and do this project. And it's crazy that Felix, man, have you not heard of Roger Parisius? I mean, this is a significant guy. You should look into it, because I hope you keep writing on this topic, and I hope you use all of us and even our critiques to inspire you and to keep writing more and do, Thames and Hudson let you do a book. You could always do another book. And the fact that you focus, I'm talking to Felix Dr. Taylor here, the fact that you focus on the literary emergences into mainstream culture, I mean, that's what no one says that's what your book's about, but except for Ronald Hutton. That's exciting to me. They should have, that's to the back of the room, of course, but that's exciting for me. The book's being misadvertised, but that's okay as long as it gets people into the right hands. Just like the title of this YouTube video is, I think it's clickbaity, but that's why I answered the bait right away, because I'm like, the only thing wrong with this book is not longer.
So that's how that came about. He famously didn't pay her very much. It took quite a long time and a lot of effort on her part. And yeah, what was produced was probably the most influential tarot deck of all time that is obviously still in use. The designs are iconic, and that deck is probably identifiable by people who know nothing about the occult or the Golden Dawn. So it's not directly related to the Golden Dawn specifically, I don't think.
Okay.
It's more a kind of, these people were in the same magical circles, and one identified the other.
So one of the reasons the magician card in the Pixie Waite Yeats deck doesn't have Golden Dawn tools on it is because Yeats recommended they base it on the Welsh Grail myth, and then they used the weapons of Ireland, the sacred gems of Ireland of the 4 provinces. And that's why they have the cauldron. It's a small cauldron, but it's meant to be a cauldron, a spear, the spear of Louv, and the sword of Nua, and the stone, the Leafal, the stone of destiny.
As being a
So-
useful.
Yeah, did her art generally play a larger role in the Golden Dawn, like within the temples or the rituals?
Not that I can work out. No.
Oh.
Her art seems to have been. I don't know. I wouldn't call it a separate pursuit, because it was certainly influenced by occult symbolism, which she might have learned in the Golden Dawn meetings, or from Yeats, who was a good friend of hers and collaborator. But she exhibited in New York. She had her own career as outside of the Golden Dawn. And as I said, she didn't progress. She didn't.
I apologize. I can't make this video play a bit faster. For some reason, I don't have that kind of control in the back end here.
Devote too much time to it, so I don't think she influenced.
Can do for next stream though is I can take the video and chop out just like all the filler words, all the dead air, and just have the highlights, and I'll just react to that, because otherwise these things are always going to be like 2, 3, 4 hours long, which is a lot, and it's a massive time expense. And YouTube doesn't really give me any ad revenue. Thank you for watching the ads. I do get something and it helps, but super chats and memberships, if you join my channel for a few bucks for a month, makes a bigger difference than anything else. So please support my work if you are so kind enough to do so.
Especially Waite's group. I don't think she influenced the art or the rituals or the teachings. Yeah, she was just one of those. There were so many people who kind of came into the Golden Dawn, and either they left quite quickly or they just stayed around doing their own thing, I suppose, and not really devoting much time to it. Yeah.
Well, as we're getting on for an hour, we haven't touched on Charles Williams or Dion Fortune, but I do just want to give you, maybe the opportunity to mention anything that.
Charles Williams, no one's even heard of him. Actually, that's probably true. Dion Fortune, no one's heard of her. You don't have to talk about her.
Mentioned, but I have one question, which is that, was there anything that surprised you that you didn't expect to sort of find in your research about the Golden Dawn that is something that surprised you or people overlook?
Come on, man, you just wrote a whole book on it. I've seen.
I think I was surprised
that you should mention
by the sheer amount of creative people connected to the Order of the Golden Dawn. Even in the original
we'll take it.
decade or so, it was just. I'd come to the project kind of assuming that there were these kind of larger than life figures, Machen, Yeats, Crowley, who are kind of the only ones influenced by the occult. But there were so many members who had either artistic careers separate to the Golden Dawn. They might have been playwrights or translators or novelists, and so little is known about most of them that it's really hard to place them within the history, within the story.
It's true. It takes us a lifetime to learn any details of interest to scholarship or history on this topic. So I've burned over 30 years of love and passion for this topic. I like that Felix seems like seems like the kind of guy you really would enjoy, having a cup of tea with down at the park and talking about ideas. Very open-minded guy. And I really hope that his interest in the Golden Dawn continues after this. And I think we will end up owing Dr. Taylor here a great debt of thanks for taking the Golden Dawn a step further into the public sphere, which is also a step further into demystifying it insofar as we're concerned about things like the satanic panic and all this Christian nationalism nonsense or left-wing anti-religion Marxist nonsense, all the nonsenses of the modern era have been thwarted in part by this lovely young man's new book. I really hope everyone buys it. Link in the description below for my affiliate link. Please support the channel.
So what kind of frustrated me was that I couldn't give them the space that they maybe deserved, maybe didn't. I don't know.
That's really fair. I like that he says that, because he's clearly a thoughtful guy, right? I don't know how young he is. He might be 35, 40, but I think to me, he looks like he's 25, 29 or something. But his knowledge of literature, like, again, he's not touching at all in this interview on his expertise that actually went into this book. And as you say here, Gurgops, in the comments, indeed, it's quite the Hydra. Yeah. The reason I know so much about a lot of stuff is from, like, why do I know so much about Yeats and Maud Gonne? It's not actually from reading about Yeats and Maud Gonne. It's because I have all their letters and I've read all their letters, right? That's how I know they would take Peruvian torch into the hotel room and do peyote and bone. You got to read a lot to get just a few little tidbits. And if you know what's going on in the Golden Dawn, so first you have to establish a complete knowledge of everything going on in the Golden Dawn throughout the entire era. Then you read the people's letters and look for hints as to how they were feeling about what was going on. Then you look at other people's letters, and from that you can derive some sort of sense of how people felt about things, and even the reasons for doing such certain things, or how big a deal certain things were. It's a lifetime of study. I don't think by the end of my lifetime I'll be even slightly qualified to write any kind of a history on the Golden Dawn, even though there's certainly less than a dozen people who know more about it than me.
Because maybe they had one poetry collection out there that was published, and it's inaccessible now, and we know nothing about the person biographically speaking. So it's very you can kind of mention this person in passing in the history, but you can't give them any space. But yeah, it amazed me just how many creative members there were. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything you want to make sure we
I'm sad he didn't mention the egalitarian thing, letting women in on equal footing, the practical magic component, all of these major touch points that are the highlights of what the Golden Dawn brought that the other orders and groups in this cultural milieu did not present as possibilities. So that would be a good thing. That's what I would highlight. Like, they're a mystical group that let women in when most didn't, and let them be leaders and train them as equals. And, yay, egalitarianism, equality, with meritocracy, not equity.
mention?
I've always been very interested in a man called John Brodie-Innes, he held leadership positions.
Now we're talking.
I think he founded the Edinburgh Temple of the Golden Dawn quite early on.
Are you going to mention the
he was a
Cromlech
lawyer,
order?
but he was also a novelist of these actually quite popular romance thrillers often with supernatural themes, and his novels are just not read. They're not read now. People don't know his name. I think one of his books was reprinted in an occult series of an occult library, maybe in the 70s or 80s, but it's not widely known. He was friends with Bram Stoker. He dedicated one of his novels to Stoker, and just an interesting guy, but we don't know enough about him at the same time to really, I can't really say much about him other than what I've said. So
we know a lot about him. You should have talked to us, Felix. We would have given you all the Aura papers, the Cromlech Temple papers. Any one of us could have given you all that, and you would have been like, "Whoa, oh blimey, that's a lot of information. Holy moly, what's this about the aura and sex?"
Definitely.
You want to get his name out there.
John Brodie-Innes. Yeah.
Just having fun. It's been a long one. Well, we
haven't touched on Charles
Oopsie.
Williams of the Unfortunate. I mean, I don't know if there's anything. I mean, it's a very lazy segue on my part. I'm not. Anything you want. It's very difficult to jump between all these people who are.
There's nothing to say about the Unfortunate. She was just
asking the questions. Just all alike.
Person.
Little bit of time in the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn, and then they all just veer off
mysteries
into single channels.
forever.
So it's tough to kind of leap into them, especially with someone like the Unfortunate, who then becomes basically her own powerhouse of occultism. Her own name,
a brand name.
Glastonbury's brand name. I'm not sure if this is anything you want to mention about either of these.
The reason I grouped them together in a chapter was because they both.
So no shade on Hermetics. I've seen him do some great interviews, but I think the problem is here, Hermetics, you don't know what questions to ask, and I don't think you've read the book. So if you had read Felix's book, you'd have really good questions, because I've read 40 pages of it, and I have awesome questions. They're not about Golden Dawn history, though. They're about the things that the book's on. So I would love to see, maybe you have them back after you read the book, or maybe Felix, you come on my podcast and we give people a few months, like end of the summer, to read the book, and then you get live questions, and you and me can we can talk literature, because my background's in literature. I ditched being a philologist after first year linguistics college to study romantic poetry and literature, and mainly poetry. So you and me we could get into talking about dactyls and the different pentameters and quatrameters and the significance of them in ritual or whatever. I don't know. We'd have a fun time. Plus, I'm a nice guy when I'm not doing a criticism video.
I mean, they were both operating and writing around a similar time, the 20s and 30s and early 40s, I suppose. But they both published a string of occult themed thriller novels, I suppose, in the 30s, separately. So they each published maybe 5 or 6 novels, but both of them did so with the intention of kind of initiating readers into this occult system that they had. It was really interesting. They're sort of mainstream novels that people would buy or get out from the library, and their intention was, the Unfortunate especially, she had this whole theory that she mapped out in some of the occult periodicals that people reading these kinds of books would kind of subconsciously become initiated into the mysteries, and it would put them on a path of self-discovery.
Did that happen to you?
Did it happen to me? No, not quite.
Okay.
No.
I've read maybe 2 or 3 of hers, and I find her quite sludgy. It's quite tough to power through.
Yeah, not a lot happens. You definitely wouldn't pass muster these days as a thriller.
I know a lot of West Coast neo-pagan goddess women who would have pitchforks at your door for saying that, but it's okay. I'd probably agree with you. I haven't read Gion Fortune's novels either. Read all her other stuff.
No, definitely not.
How about, I haven't read Williams. Do you get that feeling from Williams that something's
I get that a lot more with Williams, because his thrillers are short and snappy, and they're usually on a single theme, a single idea, I should say. For example, he's got a book called The Place of the Lion, which is about the Platonic archetypes erupting into the world. And there's like a protagonist, a love interest, a bad guy, and everything resolves quite quickly. But they're very intellectual and engrossing at the same time. I think that they have more of a chance of initiating readers than Dion Fortune, definitely.
she's quite moral as well.
Yeah.
She loosens it a bit near the end, but early on she's very, very moral.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, conservative values.
Basically.
Yeah.
Dion Fortune was the opposite of a conservative. She had sex before marriage. That's not a conservative thing to do back then. The Place of the Lion is a 1931 supernatural horror and fantasy novel by Charles Williams, a member of the literary group known as the Inklings, alongside C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. The story is set in a small English town of Smetham, also referred to as Hertfordshire Town, where Platonic archetypes manifest physically due to the meddling of Mr. Beringer, a man obsessed with magical symbolism who falls into a coma after summoning the first archetype, the lion. Key plot elements include the appearance of terrifying archetypal creatures like a unicorn and pterodactyl, which draw out of the spiritual strengths and flaws of the townspeople and cut the town off from the rest of the world. The narrative follows Anthony Durant, who, aided by the resilient Mr. Richardson, must use the secret names of the archetypes from a grimoire to summon them back to their spiritual point of focus and neutralize a column of unquenchable fire engulfing Beringer's home. Critical reception highlights the book as a metaphysical thriller that significantly influenced C.S. Lewis, who called it one of the major literary events of his life. That's what C.S. Lewis said about this book. The novel explores deep theological themes such as incarnation, co-inherence, and substitution, contrasting selfless love with selfish ambition as the characters navigate a crisis where the barrier between the corporeal and spiritual worlds collapses. I should do an audiobook of that little novel.
Yeah. No, but yeah, Williams over Fortune.
Okay. Well, is there anything you'd like to add about your book that you feel is key?
I'm quite proud of the conclusion, the elaborate appendix that you mentioned. It's a very brief but dense history of the occult and the arts in kind of the decades after all of these occultists had died, basically. Yeah, so I kind of end it with Alan Moore and his essay "Fossil Angels," which is his assessment of the contemporary magic scene and what he thinks of the Golden Dawn.
What's your conclusion, if you want to spoil it?
My conclusion is that the Golden Dawn has never really died. It's more of a, I guess you'd call it more of a system than an actual society anymore. All of them.
Where did this come from?
No, it's a society. It's not a society. It's an order. I don't know why they keep insisting on calling it a society. I mean, you can call it that as a generic term, but like, it's an order, and an order is a kind of thing. So it's like, if someone says, "Oh, I created a church," would you say, oh yeah, so you've created your own club. You're like, well, I created a church. They'd be like, yeah, a club. And to call it just still a system, like there's a lot of systems out there that die out and are brought back and stuff. The Golden Dawn's not one of them. It's a unbroken tradition up to modern day. But you don't know that because you didn't do your research.
I think I was surprised. Quite popular.
The mention, unfortunate.
I mean, they were both operating and writing around a similar in some of the occult periodicals, that archetypes erupting into the world of a fortune.
Okay. Well, is there anything you'd like to add about your book that you feel is key?
I'm quite proud of the conclusion, the elaborate appendix that you mentioned. It's a very brief but dense history of the occult and the arts in kind of the decades after all of these occultists had died, basically. Yeah, so I kind of end it with Alan Moore and his essay "Fossil Angels," which is his assessment of the contemporary magic scene and what he thinks of the Golden Dawn.
What's your conclusion, if you want to spoil it?
My conclusion is that the Golden Dawn has never really died. It's more of a, I guess you'd call it more of a system than an actual society anymore. All of the material is published and out there, and it's just kind of...
No, it's not. That's why we're working so hard, like Frater Yechidas, slaving away like a little... what did I say? Like a little gnome chained to a block of a gem, chained up in his room, footnoting all of these texts to get them out to the general populace from all the manuscripts that the rest of us have been studying for 25, 30, or since the beginning, so like it's not all out there. You didn't even do that basic research.
They're percolating in the culture, and people are still responding to it artistically, in very interesting and new ways, and in new...
Dude, David Griffin turned his order and made a whole church out of his order. Like, there's massive things going on in this world. It's not just some like artistic, cultural artifact that people dabble in. Trademark wars are fought over this by orders with thousands of members.
New mediums as well, film, comic books. Yeah, it's all still fascinating. And
as soon as he said he ended his book with Alan Moore, I realized there's something deeply wrong there. Like, no mention of anything of the last 10, 20, 30, 50 years of Golden Dawn scholarship by academics or independent scholars, or like, and to go to Alan Moore, who I think has no real claim to any real in-depth knowledge of the Golden Dawn. I mean, he's a cool dude, great art, love his stuff, but he says in his conclusion, in 2002, Alan Moore diagnosed the state of contemporary magic in an unpublished essay entitled Fossil Angels. He concluded that ever since science broke from magic to become a modern discipline, magic had become stuck in a nostalgic rut, looking back at a time when it had any real utility in the world. Well, that's written like someone who has no idea what's happened in the last 20 years with the Grimoire Revolution and all of that. Quote from Alan Moore, I think: whilst it's difficult to overstate the contributions made to magic as a field by, say, Eliphas Levi, or the various magicians of the Golden Dawn, it's hard to argue that these contributions were not overwhelmingly synthetic. That's Alan Moore being Alan Moore. I love Alan Moore, but I wouldn't call him a critical thinker. Let's say that he's more of a feeling magician, as we would say, in that they aspire to craft a synthesis of previous existing lore to formalize the variegated wisdoms of the ancient. Okay, well, that's kind of fair. And then Dr. Taylor continues, the 19th century occult revival had systematized Hermetic tradition and used fictional methods such as Bulwer-Lytton's novels, Rosicrucianism, and the uncertain origin of the GD cipher manuscript to link themselves to an ancient pedigree. Okay, that's fucking nonsense. So Bulwer-Lytton's novel is a fictional work drawn, about in the Rosicrucian tradition, to sort of, well, Bulwer-Lytton's his own thing. But to also refer to Rosicrucianism as fictional along the GD cipher manuscripts, it's definitely technically accurate, shall we say. But Rosicrucianism, to call 500 years of Rosicrucianism fictional, would be like to call any religion fictional. Is Islam fictional? Is Christianity fictional? Sure. If you argue yes, then it makes no sense to call this fictional, but those things, and thus implying that those other things are legit. So Rosicrucianism is just as legit as any other religion based on a text. And if you don't know that, then I don't know what to say to you. The uncertain origins of the GD cipher manuscripts. You wrote this book at the one time in history in which the knowledge of the origins of the cipher manuscripts were not unknown or uncertain. We're not uncertain. We know this. You ignored the research. You just didn't even research it. You didn't research it. Moore compares this reenactment to occultists of the 16th century like John Dee, mathematician and advisor to Elizabeth I. Okay, sure, that's an okay description. I mean, informal advisor, not an official advisor, who did not feel the need to manufacture a backstory. That's a way of saying it. His was a fresh, rip-roaring chapter written entirely in the present tense of the ongoing magical adventures, whereas that came after what was merely elaborate. Okay, so to trace the Golden Dawn back to the cipher manuscripts and Rosicrucianism, but not to see the through line back to the Hermetic aspect, is to miss the forest for the trees. Like Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, continuing the Hermetic tradition from the Hermetica, which they use in the Golden Dawn, to through the Middle Ages, through Ficino to the Lazzarelli, right, to the Crater Hermetis. This is the only edition of Lazzarelli's works in translation, and it took me 15 years to find a copy of that book that was less than $2,000 or whatever. You can't get it. Unless I guess you're an academic and they'll just like loan you a copy from the, beyond the gatekeep kept ivory towers. So to say John Dee was standing in part of the living tradition, but the Golden Dawn is just a synthetic amalgamation of what came before is the most insane thing I've ever heard someone with academic training say. Dude, brother, like Dee was as much synthetic. We're all as synthetic as one another. Dee wasn't special. Like he was a genius, but we got geniuses today. Are we synthetic? Oh, well, I'm not saying I'm a genius. That's not what I'm saying there. But anyway, for all Moore's worrying about the custodial impulse in modern magic, the GD and its members remain potent features. Blah, 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 blah. His 32 Prometheus. Ending with Alan Moore is an interesting choice. Art and magic continue to hybridize into new mediums, playing one off another. For many of the adepts of the Golden Dawn, the two were indistinguishable. Both were capable of bringing about visionary changes in the world, be it from the perspective of a reader, a spectator, or Rosicrucian initiate. In this sense, the poet and occultist share overlapping objectives. Both are prophets claiming to access a state of reality that they consider truth. Beautifully said, man. Felix is a nice writer, actually. Dr. Taylor's a nice writer. In the GD, this was evident in the symbols of alchemy and Celtic mythology intrinsic to Yeats's verse. in the 1890s, and Dion Fortune's novels and Crowley's talismanic first editions. Through its many crises and schisms, the order and its offshoots acted as a formal space to cultivate and explore art in relation to ritual practice and ancient tradition, providing a ready-made network of artists to both collaborate and inspire. The bookishness that runs inescapably through the history of occultism has meant that as magical practice evolves, art and literature evolve alongside them. Beautifully said. But it does omit the entire spiritual impetus of the entire tradition of not just the Golden Dawn, but Rosicrucianism in general. And it omits the entire, then from whether for the Christian mystical aspect, the pagan resuscitation of Neoplatonic thought through Hermetic thought and theosis, divinization, the journey to the nous. Like, all of this is in the Golden Dawn. All of it's spelled out. And there's these initiations that are seen as magical ceremonies that help you guide your practice and your journey from one to the next along the way of Hermes. That's what the Golden Dawn is. It's a pathway. It's a system. It's a guidepost system and a school of initiation to guide you along the way of Hermes. And he mentions none of that, but that's okay. He mentions the literary value, and hopefully that'll get some normies to be like less satanic panicky and more thoughtful in their thoughts. Let's jump to the questions quickly. We got Chameleon. Nice to see you. I just looked. There is a 7-book series in which The Place of the Lion is part of. Yeah. All of the other titles also by Charles Williams. Yes. And I believe he published his works all as Fiona Shaw under a female pen name. And Yeats didn't even know that's who Fiona Shaw was for a long time. That thought that Fiona Shaw and Charles Williams were two different people. Even Yeats thought that, because Charles Williams was very involved in what I think of John Michael Greer. Yeah, he's a fascinating guy, really interesting thinker, prolific as all hell. I don't understand his decisions in the 7th edition of the Golden Dawn Black Brick, where he added things that he knew weren't there, shouldn't be there. He intentionally added black and white checkered floors to the temples, even though he knew they shouldn't be there, and they weren't there in the previous editions because they're not meant to be there, but he added them anyway because he wanted to, which to me is not the work of an editor. That's the work of a reformer. So, but yeah, I John Michael Greer is really interesting, and I like that he's not afraid to talk about what's going on in the world today. More Scottish. Science Shaw Drachina. I mean, in Irish, we spell those words slightly differently, but I understand what you're saying. Yeah. Science is magic, just of a different caliber, or else alchemy never would have birthed chemistry. I don't think alchemy did birth chemistry. I think they developed along separate lines. How can we trust science if we can't have faith? That's a good point. Yeah, I feel you. I know what you're saying. Let's wrap this up.
And there's material for more books.
Is that what you're going to do now? You're going to write another book on the Golden Dawn?
I don't think so. I think I've said what I wanted to say. My next book that's coming out is a.
But maybe if you studied all the history that we've learned and published by academics and scholars the last 30 years, you would have more to say. If you actually got up to date on the research, you'd probably have a lot more to say.
Kind of biography of Arthur Machen, which should be out next year. Nice. So there'll be more Golden Dawn content in there as well.
Do you think it'll be possible, if a publisher is listening, for a biography of John Innes?
John Brodie-Innes?
Yeah.
I doubt it. I really doubt it. There's not enough material out there.
Right. That's a shame.
Yeah.
We have lots of material on Brodie-Innes. You just got to ask.
Arthur Machen one finished?
Yes. Yeah, it's with the publisher now. It needs some edits, but it's there.
Gave you all this unpublished Brodie-Innes stuff, eh? So let us know, Felix. Ball's in your court.
How long is it?
Yeah. It's about a similar length. It will look at his life through 6 of his books. So it's kind of an unconventional biography, but it's
Well,
hopefully
I've
uncovered things that people don't know about him. So yeah.
Well, hopefully in time we can discuss Machen and your biography when it's released.
Definitely.
But I will be sure to put the links for the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Magic Arts, and the Occult Revival in the description below. And I will emphasize again that it is a beautiful book. Like, it's brilliantly written, accessible for all these figures, and it's sort of a great entry because of bibliography and appendix, and it's beautiful. Like, it's a really nice edition. So all of those will be in the links below. But yeah, I feel like it's a good place to finish up. Felix,
Link
thanks very
below,
much.
people.
Thanks so
Go
much
use
for
my
having me.
link. Show you some more pictures. That's a famous one. See, that's a talismanic image that we'd use, and those are the clipote standing on the clouds, and that's a talismanic image drawn using the method of the inner order. Pamela Coleman Smith. Well, I didn't expect this would take 3 hours, so thanks for sticking around. Last chance for super chats, donations for all the time I'm spending on this. Appreciate it. Join the channel, that helps. Gift memberships to other people so they can do it. All right, yeah. So yeah, I will get through this book. It is dense, but going to be enjoyable. Yeah. Florence Farr and W.B. Yeats. That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it says Pixie Smith only reached the Zealotr grade. Yeah, that isn't getting very far at all. Yeah. Jack Yeats. Very cool. Yeah, this is a great addition to the Golden Dawn corpus, and it'll definitely provide a creative avenue in for artists and creative people who might understand that the Golden Dawn system is more than just the drama of the 1990s and such. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Felix, for putting in managing to get a mainstream book published on the tradition that we love so well. That's much appreciated that you did that, and hope to have you on the podcast because I like talking literature. We get in this. I'll ask you questions that actually like have to do with what you wrote, rather than really obtuse details about the Golden Dawn history that you didn't research and that your book isn't about. I don't know why they're advertising it as the first narrative full-length history of the Golden Dawn. It's nothing of the sort. It's exactly as Ronald Hutton described on the back of the book. But that's marketing. If it sells more copies, so be it. But if people buy it thinking, oh, this is the history of the Golden Dawn, then they're like not hearing anything about Westcott and Mathers at all, really, let alone Woodman, or the history of how it came out of the SRIA and OGR in Deutschland, and how that came out of the 17th century Rosicrucian and Masonic groups, which came out of the the manifestos, and before that John Dee, and then the tradition he comes out of. There's so much there. I share your concerns there, Robert. The book is there was sometimes you can get away with not reading a book and interviewing someone, but if you're asking generic questions and their book is on specific questions, then you're going to get very generic answers that are ultimately very inaccurate. That's just the nature of the thing. I need to get some exercise, get some fresh air, people. Thanks for showing up and hanging out. There's a lot of you here, which is really awesome. That's great. I'm going to keep at this. Hopefully, keep having fun with all of you. So have a good one, and maybe I'll see some of you on I don't know. There's other stuff. There's stuff going on. There's so much going on. What can I say? What can I say? Announcements? Not really. need to make more promo videos. All right. Goodbye and peace. Peace indeed. Lucky number 2633. Light and extension. Oh, I know. Slangeful. EY.
Be you still. Be you still, trembling heart. Remember the wisdom out of the old days. Him who trembles before the flame and the flood, and the winds that blow through the starry ways. Let the starry winds and the flame and the flood cover over and hide, for he has no part with the lonely, majestical multitude.
In the name of the Lord of the universe, who works in silence and whom naught but silence can express, welcome to the great work. In the tradition of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, over the next 3 years you will be guided through self-initiation of the 6 grades, from 0 = 0 neophyte to the portal of the Vault of the Adepti, at which time you may undertake a physical 5 = 6 full temple initiation, or continue to follow your path along different routes of adepthood on your way to mastery. In the rare old times, Golden Dawn members could easily work through these outer order grades in less than 2 years, but to find your path through self-initiation is necessarily harder, and this is mentioned and outlined in an unpublished Golden Dawn manuscript. I can promise you that 3 years is the fastest it can possibly be done in this manner. Do not be ashamed if it takes you far longer. Those who claim they did it faster are most certainly charlatans, and you have to be challenged and work hard to struggle through the fires of test and trial if you want to be transformed. But everyone needs help, with directions and ideally a guide to serve as Hierophant along the way. Only God can initiate you. But not only do you need to participate, you must invoke often and inflame yourself with prayer. This course is a map of the spiritual territories you must travel, and as your guide, I am also intimately familiar with the actual terrain. This path is well-trod and reliable, even praised by almost all who have reached Adeptus and the initiation of the Sun. While it is impossible to self-initiate into the Golden Dawn, it is an excellent system of spiritual initiation and alchemical transformation if you are called to become an adept of the mysteries of the Hermetic tradition.
The Arcane Research Society returns to bring esoteric scholarship and practice in 2026 with 2 major events held in Austin, Texas. Register for an annual membership and attend online or in person all of our annual events, including June 13th, our spring workshop, and November 6th through 8th, EnochiaCon, our full esotericism conference. The ARS Spring Workshop features 3 workshops led by Jason Louv, Craig Williams, and Frater RC. Spend a whole day in downtown Austin, Texas, enjoying these hands-on deep dives with experts in their fields. Register today for all live events included with ARS annual membership, Spring Workshop, and EnochiaCon, which features too many amazing presenters to name. Sign up today at arcaneresearchsociety.com.